Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, as we have a lot on tap today, as it's 11 o'clock, Wednesday, April 15th, of course, tax day. We're going to get into some of those details here in just a minute. Before we do, let's talk about what is happening today. At 1 o'clock, we'll take you to Washington for a White House press briefing with Karoline Leavitt, of course. And attending that briefing today is Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent and the Small Business Administrator Kelly Loeffler. Tomorrow, President Trump will travel to Nevada to host the roundtable on no tax on tips. And on Friday, the 47th president will travel to Arizona to deliver a speech at a tvOS event. Of course, we'll be live there in Arizona in the Grand Canyon State for that event. Meantime, as many know, it's tax day across America as tens of millions receive a refund this time around due to President Trump's working families tax cuts. And of course, including the no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. Earlier today, Kelly Loeffler told Fox more than 30 million Americans benefited from President Trump's no tax policies. So we'll be hearing much more during today's White House press briefing on that topic as well. All this as Congress is back in session debating the Save America Act, along with working to hopefully fully fund the Department of Homeland Security. We'll get to that a bit later in the broadcast as well. Let's bring in our first live guest of the day. Let's go now to the great state of Georgia, where Ryan Nilsap is running for a U.S. congressional seat in that state. Thanks so much for joining us, Ryan.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. Let's talk about your run for Congress. Why are you doing it?
Well, I'm not a career politician, and this is not what I imagined for myself in the past, but I've been in a 5-year war with Antifa. And I've seen what the world looks like if the Democrats are in charge, and it's a bleak, bleak picture. So, I have a big piece of land on the south side of Atlanta that I've been warring with Antifa about for 5 years. They've sued me for 5 years. They occupied my land for 18 months. I couldn't get them removed from the land because the Democratic leadership in DeKalb, which is all Democrats, refused to actually enforce the law on these Antifas. And what I started to learn is that Antifa is an organization that has foot soldiers all the way up to infiltration into the government and in the court system. These people that are commies have embedded themselves everywhere. And I just decided that enough was enough. I'd begged the career politicians to get tough with these guys, and they just refused to do it. So I felt like there was no other choice I had but to enter the fray.
Well, you've entered the fray as you are throwing your hat in the ring, running for Congress in Georgia. We know specifically President Trump has had very strong words against Antifa, and we've seen some of those actions in places like Oregon and California and other places out there. But as we move forward, I think we, the people, are hearing what you're saying, because at the end of the day, this whole thing is about freedom. It's all about God, family, country, and those are the basics that we have to stick to, don't we?
Well, that's what it's about. I mean, our forefathers were gracious enough to give us an incredible constitutional republic. Now, that constitutional republic was primarily structured to protect your individual freedom and my individual freedom. And that individual liberty is our ability to have a veto against the mob. Now, it's not the other way around. The mob doesn't get to tell us what to do. We aren't a democracy. We are a constitutionally governed life. And that life is for my protection and your protection. And if we don't step up and start to fight for our Constitution, then the other side, the Democrats, the commies, they want to destroy the Constitution and with it all of our rights. They want to take your ability to speak freely. They want to take your guns. They would gladly take all of your worldly possessions because they don't even believe in private property. So unless people like me and you step up and start to fight them, and not rely on the career politicians because they're part of the system, but unless us everyday citizens step up and start to punch them in the face, they're going to take everything from us.
Obviously, figuratively speaking, punching in the face. But here's the point, though. At the end of the day, what needs to happen is the Save America Act needs to pass. Are you surprised to see the Senate, it doesn't look like it's going to pass. I'm just going to be honest about that.
Listen, I'm not surprised at all because our current politicians don't have backbone. They have too much skin in the game from a career standpoint, right? Their livelihood depends on staying in the positions they're in. Most of them are career politicians. Very few of them have actually built companies. Very few of them have wealth outside of what they've created inside of politics, which is not the place people should be getting rich. But in order to protect their fiefdoms, in order to protect the toll bridges they've created for us that they get paid on, they have to comply with the status quo. And so I'm not shocked at all that they don't have the strength or the determination to do what it takes to pass these very basic things. All we're asking for is for voters to be 1-to-1, registered voter, actual citizen. That vote can be counted and audited. These are not difficult asks, and yet they're blocking it for their own gain.
Yeah, and that's what we're seeing. I mean, you can't disagree with results, right, and evidence. Right now, the Save America Act is still being debated on the Senate floor, but you need to have a nuclear option with ending the filibuster, but we don't have the numbers to do that. And that's a very terrible thing for our election system in our country. You got to tell it like it is, right? Let's also talk about the future of our country, as we don't want to look like a place like Ireland right now, or the UK, or China, of course, or maybe even parts of California. What do you think needs to be done in order to win? Of course, we see a lot of wins under President Trump back in 2016 and 2020. Let's talk about that as well. What was it like for you when you saw a man like President Trump, an outsider, going in there and saying, you know what, I'm going to tell it like it is?
I mean, we should all be so thankful that we have President Trump. I mean, the guy has done incredible things, I think exceeded all of our expectations in his willingness to take risks, in his willingness to make entrepreneurial decisions. But this is what happens when you fill seats with guys who've done other things in the world, who've had lots of success in other venues besides politics. President Trump brings a life of experience with balance sheets, profit and loss statements, building businesses, marketing ideas, and actually having to compete in the world of a free market. That's a much tougher place to compete than the world of bureaucracy. And he's really crushed the world of bureaucracy as much as he can. Now, they fight against him everywhere he goes. That's why we need to fill these seats, go back and systematically fill these seats with as many people like President Trump as we possibly can. Now, I have a huge amount of experience. I'm 51 years old. I've built numerous businesses. I've done billions of dollars in deals all over the world and had tremendous amounts of success in the free market part of our economy. For us to succeed as a country, we need to go back to a citizenry that's willing to serve in politics as a hobby, not as a career, but as a side job, as holding that seat so that other people who will abuse the seat can't sit in it. That's where we have to start. Now, one guy can't do it alone, but when I sit in that seat, then I'm going to go recruit other guys like me. I'm going to teach them how to be politicians as a hobby, politicians who are looking to serve as a defense against abuse rather than as a career.
That's a great point. So it sounds like you'd be all for term limits.
I would love to see term limits. In fact, I'd love to see limits put on who could even run for Congress by age. Unless you've already had an entire other life, unless you've already had other career, other experiences, had to pay mortgages, pay for kids to go to college, raised a family, done all of these very responsible things that we all experience as adults, now you are actually in a position where you could go back to Washington and add value in the laws you were creating, add value in the laws you weren't passing, right? Because you actually have real life experience to know what people need as Americans in order to chase the American dream. If you're 30 years old and you've never lived any life outside of politics, what actual wisdom or context could you have to look after the American people as their representative? And
I won't say I agree with what you're saying there. I will say, you look at people like John Strand, a patriot, someone that, a J6er that was falsely charged, set free early. So there's different situations, different context where I would say, well, that guy's a freedom fighter. This guy's all about freedom for this country. So in that case, I'm for it. But to your point, outside of that, you have to have the experience, don't you?
Well, I mean, obviously he's bringing an experience of getting abused by bureaucracy. I'm bringing experience about being abused by bureaucracy. Those things are important because you're actually motivated to go and fix the system, motivated to go and fight the evils that are trying to destroy Americanism. So it's not necessarily about age, but it really has to do with the fact of having real life experience. Now, in general, I would say that even a guy like him who is young and had this experience of being abused by the bureaucracy, he would be even better if he had another 10 or 15 years of life experience before he went to serve. So I think it's difficult to argue against age and experience when it comes to bringing real world life experience to the office.
100%. I hear both sides of the coin there. And that's more of a rare situation with John. And he's actually going to join us here on the show a little bit later on the broadcast because, you know, and also there's somebody that's 21 years old running for a state seat in Iowa. So it's kind of like people that do watch the broadcast, whether live or on replay, the Gen Zers out there, right? Those that love God, family, country, and love the great late Charlie Kirk and that kind of thing. We don't want to kind of say, oh, don't run or don't get involved. Get involved, maybe not for one of the highest offices in the land when it comes to Congress, right? But, you know, city council and those things. What would be your encouragement to Gen Z out there?
Well, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're talking about term limits around Congress and Senate. We have 530,000 elected positions in the United States, and the Republican side has done a very poor job in mapping that out and building pipelines to fill all those positions, building funds to help people run for those positions, educating people about how to run for those positions. That's one of the things I'd like to change. I want to build an organization in this country for the Republican Party that helps us fill those seats on the school board, helps us fill those seats in the local county commission, helps us fill that district attorney spot. You know, we can just take the George Soros playbook and run it in reverse. George basically looked at all of this like a hedge fund manager and said, where are the weak points? Where are the points that are bottlenecks? Where are the points we can exploit for the least amount of money? And he identified places like district attorney. He said, I don't have to control the judge. I don't have to control the sheriff. If I control the district attorney, I can be a bottleneck and just not prosecute people. Well, he's abusing the system. We need to systematically go back and fill all those spots with Gen Zers. They're the future. So we need people to be in elected positions. I'm just talking about at the highest levels of government, we need people to come in with a huge amount of real life experience.
And that's exactly what you have, a great patriot running for Congress in the state of Georgia. So glad to have you on the broadcast. Also, as you move forward, when is your guys' primary date?
Our primary is May 19th. So we're in a 37-day sprint right now. We're excited. We have a huge amount of momentum on the ground. People loved. I mean, District 10 is a savagely Republican, savagely American, wonderfully constitutionalist district that's 75% Republican. So this seat should really be held by a patriot like me who loves this country, wants to defend this country, believes in the values of the fundamental level of this country, that wants to protect the Constitution, believes the Second Amendment is absolute and applies to weapons of war for the citizenry. This seat, District 10 in Georgia, should really be a bulwark, a foundation for true Americanism in the United States.
And I hear you loud and clear. When you were saying that about the 75% of people that are just on the right side of history like you are, I'm thinking about the whole entire country, the massive majority of the nation, I would say, believes in what you just said there. All about God, family, country, a constitutional republic. We need more people like you, sir, running for office. Ryan Nilsap out of Georgia, thank you again for joining us here on Right Side.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Ryan. Well, great stuff there. I mean, again, we run into patriots, whether they're in office like an Eli Crane or Tommy Tuberville. We see Ryan Nilsap running in Georgia. We'll have John Strand on the broadcast. We'll also have Steve Hilton on the broadcast at about 12 o'clock, running for governor in California, and a number of other live interviews as we await Karoline Leavitt at the White House. Let's go to some of our sponsors here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. It's 11:14 Eastern. Let's go to mypillow.com/RSBN. Of course, a lot of great products there that you see on your screen. The warehouse moving sale. Save up to 80% on some of the best products that are out there. And I'm not kidding around because my family and I, we have at least 7 or 8 of these products. And on top of that, I've tried this before, the My Coffee from Mike Lindell, of course. So good stuff here, along with the pillows, the sheets, the slides, the slippers, all the things, the dog beds. They're all great, especially if you have a pet. So warehouse moving sale, save up to 80% right there that you see on your screen. Go to mypillow.com/RSBN. Also, speaking of Right Side, if you'd like to donate to the network, all you have to do is go to rsbnetwork.com/donate, rsbnetwork.com/donate. All right, speaking of Right Side Broadcasting Network, speaking of, rallies and that kind of thing, as you saw those videos, we will be in Arizona on Friday. President Trump to speak there. And also, the day before that, he'll be in Nevada for a roundtable on no tax on tips. So we'll have the coverage live in Nevada. And then we'll, of course, have boots on the ground on Friday, speaking with we the people out there about our great country as we're getting ready slowly to celebrate July 4th, America 250, Freedom 250, the 250th birthday of the United States of America, and people like Ryan, running for office there, really echoing the sentiment across the country for a mass majority of the nation. All of us that said, you know what? President Trump, 2016, let's do this thing. President Trump, 2020, let's also do this thing and get it taken from us. And also 2024, let's do this thing, because this is all about freedom. This is all about patriotism. And that's what we the people are all about, established in 1776. So let's move on with our live broadcast here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. We're going to go to, let's stay in Georgia. Let's go back to Georgia within the 24/7 news cycle. The vice president speaking at a TPUSA event yesterday. While we have our live interviews throughout the day and while we talk about some of the news of the day, we're going to dip in and out of the TPUSA event as the vice president spoke for about an hour yesterday. We're only going to go for a few minutes here, but let's dive into that and we'll be right back.
Andrew? What's up, man? Mr. Vice President, good to see you. Thank you all. What a welcome. Hello, Athens. Yeah. I think that's their thing. I like it. That is definitely their thing. So I've been to 2 SEC schools with Turning Point USA, and my Ohio State brethren are ashamed of me because I've given you guys way more love than my own alma mater, but it's pretty good to be in SEC country, I have to say. It's great to be here. We can help fix that. We can work on that. So for those of you wondering why I don't have really flowing, long, blonde hair right now, so I'm going to address it right at the front. Mr. Vice President, I'm on stage here instead of our friend Erica Kirk. That's right. Because unfortunately, she has received some very serious threats in her direction, which is terrible. It's a terrible reflection on the state of reality and the state of the country. But it underscores a larger point that she has received a lot of attacks. From surprising places, perhaps. Tell us what you think about that. Some of the people that have made, part-time jobs out of attacking Erica, and this is the net result.
Sure. Well, first of all, I love Erica, and I know that she did get some threats. And, about 2 hours ago, as you know, Andrew, I was a little worried that we were going to have to cancel the event because Erica was not going to come, and she was very worried about it. And I talked to the Secret Service, and obviously these guys do a very good job. And I said, you know what? Let's let Erica do what she needs to do for herself and her family. I'm sure Andrew will fill in. And let's go and make this an amazing event with the Georgia Bulldogs in Athens, Georgia. So absolutely, we're going to do this thing. But look, I mean, in so many ways, when did Charlie die? It was mid-September, I believe.
September 10th.
And in the past, that's right, it was the day right before September 11th. And in so many ways, the past 6 or so months have been 2 separate living hells for Erica Kirk. And the first is, of course, that she lost her husband. She lost the father of her children. And I'll never forget this because, I mean, frankly, I think a lot about it because my wife is now pregnant with our 4th baby, is when we went and picked up, thank you. But when we went and picked up Charlie's body in Utah, and of course you were there with us, and I met Erica, and I met the family. I mean, I met his parents and his little sister. And I just think about that moment and where she was so broken And any of you know who anybody who's grieved before is you kind of go from just crestfallen and sad, and then you want to remember the person that you just lost. And there's just this constant flood of emotions, right? At one moment, you're laughing about something they said 2 years ago, and at another moment, you're sobbing because they're not there anymore. And I thought about that moment a lot because Erica told me, and that was the first time she'd ever told me this. And I guess I thought about it a lot in the context of our own, my wife's pregnancy. She said, I really wish that we had had more babies together. And that kind of hit me like, it's just it, he's gone. That was sort of one of the moments where I realized Charlie's not coming back here. And you have this mom who's really sad about the fact that her 2 little kids may never have memories. I mean, you think about like as a father, I know most of you out there are too young to have kids, but one of the things that you think about as a father is, I want my kids to remember this moment, right? I want my 6-year-old to remember when I took him to the zoo, or my 6-year-old son was just baptized on Easter Sunday, and I want him to remember that moment with me. And thank you. But so Erica's struggling with this, and of course that's terrible, unspeakable. Most of us could not even put ourselves in her shoes, while at the same time, she's trying to make sure that Charlie's legacy doesn't die. And in that context, everybody is attacking her over everything, and they're lying about her, and it's one of the most disgraceful things that I've ever seen in public life. And I've seen a lot of crazy stuff in my life as a political leader, and I will tell you that the people who tell you, I was there with her, I was holding her hand, my wife was hugging her while we loaded Charlie's body onto Air Force 2 and said the Lord's Prayer, the people telling you that Erica wasn't grieving her husband are full of shit. And we need to be honest about that fact. Excuse my language. My wife says I got to work on my language. She's been telling me that for 12 years, and it still hasn't taken. But the thing is, look, when you become a public figure, the natural thing, and I've talked to Erica about this privately, is a ton of crazy people say a ton of things about you that simply aren't true. But the thing that makes it so egregious with Erica is that she's a grieving person who's trying to carry on her husband's legacy. And look, we all do things that are wrong. If you want to, criticize Turning Point USA for not taking this position or having this political disagreement, or maybe it should do this or that, that's all above board. But to say that Erica Kirk wasn't grieving her husband on that day, to say that Erica Kirk was somehow complicit in it, is so preposterous and so disgusting. And it's one of the things that has broken, I think, the American public conversation over the last 6 months. Andrew, we could talk about this for a long time. Charlie's absence, I felt it so many times in so many different ways. There have been so many times where I wanted to call Charlie and say, man, you've got to call this person, or man, you've got to put this event together so we can help this candidate, or just to bounce ideas off of as a friend. There have been so many ways in which I felt that void, but one of the ways in which I felt that void is that it's like the response to Charlie Kirk dying, the response to Charlie Kirk getting assassinated by a left-wing furry lover, is the response should have been, let's go after left-wing violence and terrorism. Let's defund the networks of left-wing violence and terrorism. That's what we've been doing in Washington, D.C., and that's what we've been fighting for every single day. Savannah Hernandez, of course, was assaulted in Minnesota a couple days ago. I talked to Kash Patel on the way down here, and I said, I assume that we're doing something here. And he said, yes, we've had multiple agents on the ground. We've already talked to Savannah. We're going to use the video to try to go after the people who assaulted her and then try to defund the networks that fund those radicals who are going around assaulting activists. That's what we should be doing. And I know that politics is hard, and I know that it's challenging, and I know that things aren't always easy, and we're going to have disagreements even within our coalition. But if you're going after Erica Kirk and not the people who are trying to destroy the United States of America, you're part of the problem, not part of the solution.
Yeah, amen. I think that's really well said, Mr. Vice President, and I always try and remember that Erica has to live with this constant reality that her kids are one parent away from being orphans. And so we take that extremely seriously. And as you mentioned, what happened with Savannah, and I think it's just important that we remember that we're dealing with humans. These are human beings.
Exactly. And I've heard some people say, well, Erica was smiling 2 days after Charlie Kirk died or something like that. And it's like, most of us in this room have grieved somebody that we loved. Maybe, hopefully not a spouse who dies in the prime of their life, but when you deal with somebody who's grieving, it's always this weird combination of emotions. It's intense sadness, intense affection. It's, you sort of love that person in that moment, maybe more than you ever have because you feel their absence. You think about all the happy moments that you had and you can't help but smile, and then you remember they're not there and you can't help but sob. That's what grief is like. And so, again, if your instinct is to go after not the left-wing radicals who are assaulting Savannah, or not the people who shot Charlie Kirk, but if your instinct is to go after a young mother because she's grieving in a way that you find you find wrong, well, why don't you stay in your lane and mind your own business?
Yeah, amen.
Grief is complicated, so. There's another angle of this, Andrew, which is just so absurd, which is that, people will say that, Erica, she's been doing this or she's been doing that, and I would be doing something different. And it's like, first of all, that's fine. Like, if you want to criticize somebody because you have a disagreement, disagree with my politics, disagree with something that Erica or Andrew say on the Turning Point podcast, but this desire to go after her for the way she's grieving her husband, that's the most preposterous thing I've seen in a very long time, and I've seen a lot of crazy stuff in politics.
Amen.
All right, so you just saw, of course, the Vice President of the United States speaking in Georgia just yesterday. We'll get back to some more of that in case you missed it. We have a lot of live interviews coming up as well, but let's go to a number of our great sponsors here on Right Side Broadcasting Network, including Plan Select. So the question is, are you getting all of the benefits you deserve from your Medicare Advantage plan? Because many people don't realize their plan may include valuable extras that can save them thousands of dollars every year. And all you have to do to qualify, or to see if you qualify, call that number, 877-664-8133. So with the right Medicare Advantage plan, you could receive a gym membership at no cost to help you stay active and healthy. If you need a ride, many plans include transportation services with up to 60 rides per year to your doctor's appointments or pharmacy. Also, we're told that some plans also offer meal delivery programs with up to 28 meals delivered each year at no cost. Perfect for after a hospital stay, or maybe when you just need a little extra help. So you may also qualify for an over-the-counter allowance of up to $800 per year for everyday essentials like vitamins, first aid supplies, cold and flu medicine, and dental hygiene products. And that's not all. Certain plans provide a grocery card with up to $3,600 per year to help pay for healthy food and household essentials. All you have to do is call that number, 877-664-8133, to see if you qualify. And of course, the big question is, are you taking advantage of everything your plan offers? You can call them today, 877-664-8133. Licensed agents will review your options and help make sure you're getting every benefit available to you. Call now, 877-664-8133, to speak with a licensed Medicare Advantage plan agent. This live stream broadcast also brought to you by our next great sponsor. You see it right there, CovePure.com. And as you guys know, you've heard us talk about Cove Pure before. And if those water scares, if you remember in Flint, Michigan, and then East Palestine, Ohio, weren't enough to get you to make the switch, well, this just might. More than 176 million Americans are actually drinking tap water with PFAs in it. There are these man-made chemicals used in food packaging, non-stick cookware, firefighting foam. Scientists call them forever chemicals because once they're in your body, they stay there. They don't break down, and then they're linked to hormone disruption, immune damage, and increased cancer risk. But here's the part that is making some people upset. The EPA set legal limits for PFAs in drinking water back in 2024, but the water systems out there have until 2031 to comply. That's 5 whole years from now. So until that deadline arrives, the utility can actually be operating above the legal limit right now and is not required to notify you. So you're just drinking that tap water. Hopefully not, to be honest. The tap water, first of all, tastes like crap. And that's why every single household needs Cove Pure. The government knows these chemicals are harmful enough to regulate. They're just not making anyone act on it quite yet. So that means if you want clean, healthy water, you're gonna have to do it yourself. And Cove Pure was engineered exactly for this. Unlike the normal pitcher filters that you get at the store, their Clearwave reverse osmosis technology, say that 3 times fast, their Clearwave reverse osmosis technology is certified to remove up to 99.9% of contaminants. So it's those PFAs, the heavy metals, the fluoride, pharmaceuticals. They're filtering particles hundreds of thousands of times smaller than a single human hair. And the best part about Cove Pure is they make it so easy. It sits right on your countertop. You don't have to drill any holes or call someone in to install it. You just plug it in. You can even get whatever temperature water you want, hot, cold, or warm, with a tap of a button. So you don't have to wait till 2031. Take control of your water quality right now. Head to covepure.com/RSBN or use that QR code. You can save $250 off right now for being a viewer of RSBN. So covepure.com/RSBN. All right, let's go to our next live interview here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Getting ready for that Karoline Leavitt press conference. It's going to be quite the press conference. We'll dive back into that in just a second. But let's go now to Alfonso Aguilar. He's the director of the America First Policy Institute, Hispanic Leadership Coalition. Second time here joining us on the show. Thanks so much, Alfonso, for joining us live.
Great to be with you.
All right, let's talk about some of the things that we see. We see on the Senate floor, they're debating the Save America Act. I also understand that you were on a panel, is that this week, right? All about our elections and that kind of thing. So can you share with us an update from your neck of the woods?
Well, the Save America Act, I would say it'd be great if Senate Republicans would get their act together and get something out of the Senate so that the president could sign it and turn it into law with some very basic requirements the majority of Americans, the vast majority of Americans support, including Hispanic Americans, requiring a proof of citizenship to register to vote and proof of identity, showing an ID when it's time to vote. That is very basic. In most countries, they require ID to vote. As I said, over 80% of Americans support that, over 80% of Democrats, over 80% of Hispanics. So this is not a controversial issue. I don't know why it is. I don't know why Democrats are making this so difficult. This is a priority for the president. I think it'd be nice if Senate leadership would have the courage to do what's necessary, perhaps a talking filibuster to pass this, because I do believe that if we do pass the Save America Act, and we institute these 2 important provisions, I don't think Democrats are going to continue winning that many elections because they're used to committing fraud, they're used to cheating, and that's why, despite the vast support that these measures have, that's why Democrats are opposing them. Makes no sense until you realize how they depend on fraud and cheating and all sorts of gimmicks to win elections.
I think we should replay the soundbite you just said to every network, every social media platform. No, I'm not kidding. Really, I mean, that's exactly right. At the end of the day, we're looking at the Democrats saying, we don't want this to happen. And you said, if the Save America Act passes, basically, we shouldn't lose another election because we have the numbers. Right. We know that the mass majority, I think that's the thing that people sometimes don't maybe remember, and I'm not saying everybody, but we have the mass majority of the people in this country that are on the right side of history. It's called We the People, right? And the left-wing media and some of the Democrats out there act like they've got such a big gathering of people. The only ones that they probably have are paid protesters. But anyway, I'm getting off track here. But do you hear my point, though, that we have the majority?
Absolutely. But, what's annoying about their argument that not only are they not listening to the American people, they're also insulting women, African Americans, Hispanics, people in rural communities, saying that they don't have the agency, they don't have the ability to get an ID or to get proof of citizenship.
So ridiculous.
That is so insulting. In America, you can't function without an ID. You have an ID to open a bank account, to get certain prescriptions. So you're telling me that poor people who are minorities cannot find an ID. That's absolutely ridiculous. That's a very poor excuse. I always give the example of Puerto Rico, which is a U.S. territory. It's actually the poorest jurisdiction in the United States. They require ID to vote, and their voter turnout in every single election is very, very high, higher perhaps than most states. What does that tell you? It just, a person may have maybe a low income. They can still find ways to get an ID. Everybody needs an ID to operate in American society. Same thing if they're naturalized, proof of citizenship, or they're born here. It's easy to get those documents. So the excuses that they're giving are very insulting.
To your point, how insulting to millions and millions of Americans out there that already have certain IDs, maybe a driver's license or whatever, right? Yeah. That they can't prove that they're a citizen, and the Democrats are saying, well, that won't happen in time for the election. The election's in November. Newsflash.
Right. Or women that change their name because they get married. I mean, people get married every day in America. They have to change their names in their bank accounts and different things. This is nothing difficult to do. So, I mean, but I think it shows the lack of seriousness of their argument, and that, frankly, what they want is to cheat on elections.
That's exactly right. They're trying to bring all these arguments, but they are more like Swiss cheese. There's a lot of holes in those arguments that we're seeing out there, and it's not common sense, as you know. So talk to us about, were you recently, or are you going to be on a panel coming up this week? Is that right?
No, not on Save America Act. For us, this week is about the working families tax cuts, which, for taxpayers, today's the last day to pay your taxes. You're going to see amazing numbers, large refunds. The average American is going to get a refund of about $2,400. The average family, $3,800. That's an incredible increase in refunds for families. And what President Trump is doing with the working families tax cuts is that he's restoring the American dream. He is putting in place a tax system that works for workers, for families, for seniors, and it's very basic. Don't tax income. So there's no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, increasing the deductions for seniors. So you're not putting a tax on the retirement income. And that is the American dream. You keep more money in your pocket, so perhaps you can go to dinner with your family, or go on a vacation, or send your kid to college, or start a business, or invest and grow your capital. That's the American dream. The American dream is not guaranteeing that everybody's going to become a millionaire, but that your standard of living is going to improve, and that you're going to have the opportunity to follow your dreams. And that's exactly what this tax system is doing, by focusing on workers. With the Hispanic community, the impact is tremendous. About 24% of all tipped employees in the United States are Hispanic, and they're overrepresented in industries where overtime is required: agriculture, construction. So the benefit is incredible. Everybody I talk to, the response is incredible, how they see in their taxes that they're keeping more of their money. And we just announced today, people can go to our website, www.americafirstpolicy.com. We have a new tax calculator, and it's personalized. So you can enter your family information, your personal information, and it will tell you how the working families tax cuts are working for you. This is about an America First economy that restores the American dream.
And I haven't seen any other president in many years ever call it a working families tax cut, because they understand the taxes are high. But now we're seeing what President Trump has done with that. So Alfonso Aguilar, the director of the America First Policy Institute's Hispanic Leadership Coalition. Alfonso, thanks again for your insight on the Save America Act and the working families tax cuts under President Trump.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Always good to have insight on different things that are happening out there. Of course, we haven't brought up Operation Epic Fury yet, but of course we can now when we know that the Strait of Hormuz is fully blockaded, specifically nothing going in and out when it comes to Iran. I just saw that statement yesterday from CENTCOM, the admiral speaking about that. So that is signed, sealed, and delivered there when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz. We'll see. We'll monitor the latest on that as we get it. But let's go to some of our sponsors as we get ready for more live interviews and more news of the day. All Family Pharmacy, great sponsor here, along with all of them. But let's talk about All Family Pharmacy, because with everything going on in the world right now, the supply chain issues, global instability, shortages that not many are talking about, your access to medication is something that should be top of mind, because most people don't think about it until they need something and can't get it. And by then, it's just too late. So we've been recommending All Family Pharmacy for a while now, and this is exactly why. They're an independent American pharmacy that helps you stay stocked and prepared. They carry hard-to-find medications like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, mebendazole, methylene blue, and NAD+, along with more than 400 everyday prescriptions for things like blood pressure, thyroid, diabetes, and more. They make this process simple, which, sometimes it's easy, or it's great to have things that are just simple like this. If you already have a prescription, your doctor can just send it straight to them. If you don't have a prescription, all you do is go online, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You fill out a quick form, a licensed doctor reviews it, and if appropriate, they handle the prescription, and then it ships right to your door. So this is really all about being prepared before you need it, not scrambling after the fact. The people who have what they need in a crisis are the ones who simply planned ahead. So don't wait until the shelves are empty. You can get ahead of all of that now. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN to search for what you and your family might need and save 10% at checkout when you use the RSBN 10 promo code. Also, let's go to another sponsor here on right side, Birch Gold Group, as you see on your screen. So the dollar's convertibility into gold ended in 1971. So gold was fixed at $35 an ounce. But if you fast forward to 2026, the US dollar has lost over 85% of its purchasing power. Gold, on the other hand, has increased in value by more than 12,000%. That's why central banks are buying gold at record levels. And here at RSBN, of course, we encourage you to consider diversifying your savings with physical gold from Birch Gold Group. But it all starts with education. Birch Gold just announced their Learn and Earn Precious Metals event. So it's a free online event, rewards you for learning the basics of investing in precious metals. And if you sign up, you'll get free silver on your next purchase. So get even larger incentives as you go. So the more you learn, the more you can earn. But you must act now, as this special event only runs until the end of the month, April 30th. The dollar lost its anchor in 1971. You don't have to lose yours. Text the word Trump to the number 989898. You see that there on the screen. This is also to join Birch Gold's Learn and Earn Precious Metals event, again, by April 30th. Text Trump to 989898 today. You also get a free info kit, which is always cool. Free's good, right? All right, let's do this. Let's take a quick commercial break. I'm Matthew Alvarez. We'll be right back here on Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from Diamond and Silk Chit Chat Live. Look, don't forget to watch my show right here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. It's imperative that you do so, okay? Bye-bye.
Turning 65? New to Medicare?
Hi, Dan Marino here. If you're turning 65 or new to Medicare, you may be eligible for additional benefits through a Medicare Advantage plan, depending on your area.
Plans vary by area, and a licensed agent can help you understand which benefits you may qualify for at no cost to you.
So make the call today. Don't miss out on the benefits you could be eligible for.
Call Plan Select now.
Welcome back to Right Side Broadcasting Network. I'm Matthew Alvarez. It's 11:45 Wednesday, April 15th. Thanks so much for joining us here on the network. Of course, at the top of the next hour at 1 o'clock, we'll go to the White House. We'll go to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Karoline Leavitt will be, of course, delivering that press briefing. On top of that, what we know today is there will be a few others in that cabinet meeting. Actually, not cabinet meeting, but cabinet folks that'll be there, including Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent and the Small Business Administrator Kelly Loeffler will be there at 1 o'clock. Again, President Trump then will travel tomorrow to Nevada to host a roundtable on no tax on tips. And on Friday, the 47th president will travel to Arizona to deliver a speech at a TPUSA event. We'll be live in the Grand Canyon State for that event as well. So a lot coming up here on Right Side. Let's also go to Florida right now. Joining us now is a great patriot running for Congress in Florida, a friend of the show, John Strand, joining us live. John, how you doing, man?
Awesome, Matthew. Thanks for having me on.
Definitely. Tell us about how things are going on the campaign in Florida.
They're going really well. We're very excited. Launching this week a ballot signature drive to collect signatures to place John Strand, Patriot for Congress, on the ballot. That's required by state law. So we're going to collect 10,000 signatures. That's our goal this month. The deadline is May 11th, so it's coming up fast. So we're out in the streets collecting signatures, getting out the word. The campaign's really exciting. And Matthew, people are ready for change, obviously. I think we have reached the breaking point on the fraud, waste, and abuse at every level of government, and just the total destruction of the trust in our government and in these institutions. So we really need to reclaim the republic. That's our campaign mission here in Florida 19, and I'm just running to restore courage, common sense, and Christian values back into the government so we can finally end that fraud and deliver what Americans are actually needing in their lives.
Yeah, exactly. We see that with We the People out there talking about this, whether it's on X or Truth Social or just in general talking with friends and family. So we see what it takes to win. We know under President Trump, 2016, 2020, now 2024, we want the Save America Act to be passed. That'll help the whole process, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's non-negotiable. If you don't have secure elections, you don't have democracy or a democratic constitutional republic. You have an oligarchy. You have a corrupt system that is rigged against us. Finally, and of course, folks know, I was put in federal prison by a weaponized DOJ because we understood at the time that the election in 2020 was rigged. It was a stolen election. And that was considered to be propaganda or conspiracy theory or whatever. Now it's just the cold hard truth of the matter. And more evidence comes out and people are finally ready to admit that. You know, I've known it since day one. I never backed down. They put me in prison, but I didn't take that plea deal because I knew the truth. One at the Supreme Court was fully exonerated. We just had new breaking news that the Proud Boys were also exonerated. So J6 was a weaponized government entrapment to cover up a stolen election. We can never let it happen again. The Save America Act is non-negotiable. So boot John Thune out of there or whatever it takes to get it done. But the American people are sick and tired of the theatrics, of the fraud, and of just a dishonest government that keeps abusing us. It's got to stop now.
What we're seeing is, you know how people talk with talking points or opinion. What you just said there isn't really a talking point. There's evidence and receipts in this. We
Absolutely.
have to see the Save America Act passed. The way to do it is nuking the filibuster. This is crunch time. This is a different political landscape than it was back in 1996 or 2006 or 2016. It's 2026. We have to end the filibuster, bypass that, and you get that through that simple majority, as you know. So really, it takes 51 Republican senators to pass the Save America Act and make it law. And if it doesn't happen, I don't know, what do you think about the future of our country?
Without secure elections, Matthew, I think the future of our country looks very dark indeed. The evidence of that is what we've all been suffering through for the last 5 or 10 years. So I don't have to make that case. We all know it's a huge problem. You're correct. this terminology I think is very interesting. Why do they call it nuke the filibuster? Like a nuclear weapon? This verbiage is designed to scare you and make you think that we're going to dismantle the Constitution. Well, hold on a second. The Constitution is a sacred guardrail for us that we must stick to and follow. We believe that. But the founders also understood that people have to be smart, intelligent, and make judgments. So in the context of the Senate, for example, you have senators that conduct their own business. So the filibuster is a rule that the Senate just invented. Okay, if that works, that's fine, but it's not working. So change the rule. So it's not the nuclear option, it's the necessary option. Like you said, we cannot play these games any longer. It is Americans' lives that are on the line, our future that's at stake. And absolutely, the Save America Act is 80+% of Americans completely endorse what this bill is going to accomplish. And yet the Senate can't get it passed. That's a scam. And we're tired of it.
And that's what we the people are saying. And speaking of we the people, and today being tax day, we look at no tax on tips and no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. The refund checks are coming in, and people are not frowning like usual on tax day. They're smiling. It's always good to have a few extra $1,000 come at you from the refund. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. We love what President Trump did with the one big beautiful bill and tax relief. Of course, that's helpful, but it's a very small step in the right direction. We have a lot of distance to cover. I am calling to end the federal income tax, which President Trump has also been consistently hinting that he wants to accomplish. We can absolutely accomplish that by using tariffs in a smart way, by ending fraud, waste, and abuse that's completely bankrupting the government, and simply by Congress doing their job to change how they handle the funding of Congress and of the federal government. So I'm calling for all those things. I'm also calling, Matthew, for the 2020 Sovereignty Act. This has been a big deal on media the last week as we've rolled it out in the Florida 19 campaign. You can find more details, of course, at johnstrand.com. But the 2020 Sovereignty Act calls for 20 years of zero immigration, 20 million deportations. No exceptions, no excuses. We're going to accelerate those deportations over the next 4 to 5 years. It is absolutely doable if we commit to it. And Matthew, it's existential. If we don't control our borders, if we don't prioritize American citizens and the tax dollars that we do pay, they have to be going to the benefit of American citizens. Everyone knows this. Everyone agrees with this, but no one's getting it done in Congress. So it's time to put patriots in Congress that will actually get it done. You can do that at johnstrand.com. And your vote and your contribution makes every bit of difference to help us win.
Yeah, 100%. Also, finally, you have a meet and greet coming up with a number of people. Who's all involved in that, and when is that?
That's right. We haven't even published it. So breaking here on RSBN, it's about to come out in the next couple of days, but we have confirmed Brandon Struck of the #Walkaway Movement, along with Alfie Oakes, the owner of Seed to Table and a patriot here in the district, and Dr. Simone Gold, the frontline doctors in Gold Care, all coming together on April 30th for an exclusive VIP meet and greet in the district. So if you're in Southwest Florida, come and find us, johnstrand.com/VIP. And again, at John Strand USA on X and johnstrand.com, that is where the fight is being waged to reclaim the Republic and save America. So join us. $26, just $26 to win 2026, one patriot at a time. So everyone can pitch in and help us make a real difference in an exciting race where we actually have an opportunity to make substantive change.
And outside of interviews like this, those of you that are literally watching live right now, outside of interviews like this, go check out John Strand's X page. See the context, see the actions speaking louder than words. I know a lot of times, John, and chime in on this. Why not?
Yeah.
Because this is not traditional media. This is not playing TV here.
Right.
John and I might have been on camera a lot and we have some experience maybe, but can you talk to us about that, John? How this isn't just, hey, let's just go win it, and you really don't care. We know you care, John. We know what you went through with J6, man.
Yeah, great point. If folks go to johnstrand.com/book, you will find Patriot Plea, the book that I wrote in prison. They abused me very badly in isolation. It's a crazy story. You got to read the book to find all the details. But the point is that I'm just an American citizen like you guys. I wasn't in politics, never wanted to be. I was just living my own American dream. But a runaway government and a weaponized DOJ destroyed my life. And in a prison cell, I had to think through, how did we get to this point? So really, the calling of my book, the passion in my heart, and the thing I want people to hear right now as they're listening, because your point is so good, Matthew. We're not playing TV or playing politics or any of that. This isn't a game. This is our country. This is our lives, the freedom that God has given to us. And this is the future, our future and our children and grandchildren's future. It's very real. And America is based on the idea that you and I are equal percentage owners of the American enterprise. Like we're all individual citizen kings of a republic. We're not ruled over by lords, or we're not supposed to be. But how did we get to this point? Well, slowly but surely, people in general have abdicated their civic responsibility in various ways. So my call is that the war for America is waged at the primary election level. If voters only show up in November, they've already lost. And America belongs to you, every single American. You have to get engaged in your government. You have to vote in primaries. You have to keep these elected officials accountable with a lot of pressure. We're doing that on X and on alternative media. So God bless you, Matthew, and RSBN. God bless Elon Musk for setting us free there. Certainly, God bless President Trump and his administration. And we need to continue to hold their feet to the fire, push hard in unity as Americans, because our call is one nation under God. And that's how we're indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. Land of the free, home of the brave, right there. John Strand running for Congress in Florida, and a shout out to Truth Social as well. Thanks, John.
Anytime. God bless you, Matthew. Thanks for having us, and God bless the United States of America. We'll see you next time.
Amen. You're welcome. And that's what it's about, right? So again, this is, if you're tuning in to Right Side for the first time, sure, we have interviews, we kind of look, it's TV and all, it is. But this isn't just for just a paycheck. This is for a real thing in our country. All about God, family, country, all about freedom, all about our elections and winning and keeping the Constitution, the law of the land, those kind of things. So anyway, all right, let's go to a few of our sponsors here on Right Side, including Kalshi.com/RSBN. Kalshi.com/RSBN. So there's a lot of topics that you could bet or trade or just check out polls. You just go to Kalshi, right? So go to Kalshi.com/RSBN, go to the QR code or just download the app and just check out what people are talking about when it comes to all of these different topics: politics, faith, sports, technology, whatever, gaming, all sorts of stuff on there. More than 1 million users on Kalshi.com. Some of the political trending questions, maybe 2028, the presidential race then. People are betting and trading and checking out polls. Or how about something that's more current events? The DHS shutdown is still happening. What the heck is going on? Congress is back. Let's get DHS fully funded, and let's see if we can try and pass that Save America Act, get it to President Trump's desk. And he so rightly coined this, from Save Act to the Save America Act. We got to get it done. Anyway, let's go to our next sponsor here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. As you see right there, Rumble Wallet. Specifically, a number of people just started using Rumble Wallet. I recently downloaded the app as well. And if you've ever been curious about buying and investing in crypto, Bitcoin, stable coins, USAT, or even gold-backed stable coins, but felt like it was too complicated, Rumble Wallet is an easy way to get started. You can buy, sell, and manage your cryptocurrencies all in one place. And the app is super straightforward. What really makes Rumble Wallet unique is that you can use it to tip your favorite creators like Right Side Broadcasting Network and others out there, and support the Freedom First community we've built here on Rumble. Getting started is simple. Just download the Rumble Wallet app, sign up with your existing Rumble account. There's no need for a new login. Complete a few security steps, and you're set up in minutes. So you can start with just a few dollars, and with this new feature called MoonPay, it's built right into Rumble Wallet, you can easily buy crypto using your credit card, debit card, or bank wire. So you've been thinking about the advantages of crypto. You can download Rumble Wallet now. Click our link in the description or search Rumble Wallet in your app store. Download Rumble Wallet today and move your assets to where they belong, in your hands, in your control. And of course, Rumble Wallet is a technology provider only and not a custodial service. You can see terms at wallet.rumble.com, and you can download the Rumble Wallet app in your app store. All right, it's 11:59. It's still the morning. We're holding on to the one last minute here across the country, as it's about 12 o'clock on the East Coast. So in about an hour, of course, we're going to go to the White House, as at 1 o'clock, we'll take you to Washington for that press briefing with Karoline Leavitt. And attending today's briefing is Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent and the Small Business Administrator Kelly Loeffler. Again, tomorrow, President Trump will travel to Nevada to host a roundtable on no tax on tips. And on Friday, the 47th president will travel to Arizona to deliver a speech at a TPUSA event. We'll be live, boots on the ground in the Grand Canyon State at that event. I'll be here in studio, Robert McNeely out there in the field. And I remember what it was like out there in the field. It is awesome because it's with we the people. It's with all of the patriots across this country. So we remember those rally days tomorrow, or actually Friday, kind of a rally day here on Right Side, which is the bread and butter of Right Side Broadcasting Network since 2015, as you guys know. Meantime, as many know, it's tax day across America as tens of thousands and tens of millions receive a refund this time around due to President Trump's working families tax cuts, including no tax on tips. How about earlier this week with the DoorDash delivery to the Oval Office? No tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. Earlier today, Kelly Loeffler, the administrator with the Small Business Administration, told Fox that more than 30 million Americans benefited from President Trump's no tax policies. So we'll be hearing much more during today's White House press briefing on that topic. On top of that, of course, we'll be hearing the question and answer as that happens. I'm sure there's plenty to talk about in the White House today. All this as Congress is back in session, debating the Save America Act, along with hopefully working to fully fund the Department of Homeland Security. We'll get to more of that a bit later in the broadcast. In the meantime, let's do this. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back here on Right Side.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from Diamond and Silk Chit Chat Live. Look, don't forget to watch my show right here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. It's imperative that you do so, okay? Bye-bye.
Turning 65, new to Medicare?
Hi, Dan Marino here. If you're turning 65 or new to Medicare, you may be eligible for additional benefits through a Medicare Advantage plan, depending on your area.
Plans vary by area, and a licensed agent can help you understand which benefits you may qualify for at no cost to you.
So make the call today. Don't miss out on the benefits you could be eligible for.
Call Plan Select now.
Welcome back to Right Side Broadcasting Network. So glad you are here with us as we get ready to go to Washington, D.C. If you're watching live or on replay right now, thanks again for live streaming. I was going to say tuning in, but this isn't really tuning in. This is not the old school television days with the rabbit ears or anything like that, but definitely live streaming. All right, let's do this. Let's go to, how about the state that we're in right now? Let's stay here in Alabama. RSBN host Robert McNeely recently caught up with Senator Tommy Tuberville, of course, running for governor in this great state. Let's go to that interview right now.
Welcome back to Right Side Broadcasting Network. The coach running for governor, it's Senator Tommy Tuberville of the Yellowhammer State of Alabama, home to Right Side Broadcasting Network. Welcome, Senator. As so much going on in Washington, first of all, happy Easter. Hope you had a wonderful recess. But there are some on the Hill, I think, that really want that recess when it comes to things like Iran, the Save America Act. Where does debate stand on these very crucial issues affecting us here domestically and abroad?
Well, we got a lot of things going on, Robert. I don't know how President Trump keeps up with it. The guy's he's a guy that can do many things at one time, and thank goodness we have him right now, because the last administration about put us over the top and did a lot of damage to our country. But that being said, a lot of people in our state obviously are concerned about the war, gas prices, funding DHS. That's what we're concerned about up here. We're getting ready to start reconciliation, probably next week, maybe the week after, and trying to fund everything that the Democrats will not vote for. They hate law enforcement in this country. So we got to make sure we get all that funded and do it through reconciliation. And we talked today about doing the second reconciliation, probably sometimes in August or September. We need to do something, because we got some things that, other than the DHS and the TSA, that we need to fund. We need to get some other things done for President Trump going into the election cycle.
Now, is there any hesitation regarding the use of the filibuster, or if going into reconciliation on such crucial issues that it could affect the filibuster down the road?
No, I think everybody's all in on the Republican side. We won't get a Democrat vote. We only need 51 votes. Of course, we really need only 50, because Vice President Vance can come over and break the tie. But we have to get this country funded when it comes to law enforcement. We got a war going on. We've got sleeper cells all over our country when it comes to a lot of these Iranians that probably came here when President Biden opened the borders up. So we live in a dangerous world. And for some reason, the Democrats don't care about that. They hate ICE. They hate closed borders. They want to open the borders back up and let 10, 20 million people continue to come into our country. And we can't afford to do that. The American taxpayer does not deserve open borders.
And you have rightfully been very outspoken on Sharia law in this country, affecting all 50 states, in fact, our territories as well, with an open border. Even today, I saw a Georgia license plate that said Allah on it, and I was really kind of shocked by it. So can you dive in for our viewers who may not know Sharia law and why it's such a danger to our constitutional republic?
Well, first of all, you always go by example. And the example that you have to look at is Europe. Europe is almost a lost cause, especially Germany, UK, Italy, France, Sweden. A lot of these countries have had open borders. They've allowed a lot of people come in from these Muslim countries. I think there's 57 of them, and they don't come in to assimilate. And we have a lot in this country as we speak. They're starting to come in, set up mosques, set up all these communities that basically go by their law. They don't go by the Constitution, our Constitution. They go by what they call Sharia law, and they go by the Quran, which is really, it's not a religion, it's more of a cult, because they don't want to assimilate with anybody. They believe if you're not studying the Quran or going by Sharia law, that you should not be involved with Muslims at all. And at the end of the day, basically, death to all people that don't believe in Sharia law and the Quran. So we live in a dangerous society. It's just started here, but we need to stop it. And if we don't stop it growing in this country, we're going to end up like Europe. And again, Europe's going to be fighting in the streets just trying to get their countries back.
And we saw that as well with Pope Leo in Algeria, visiting that very large mosque, I believe the third largest in the world, taking the shoes off, going by those trends. But the interesting history is the fact that Algeria was once a Christian nation, then violently taken over by radical Islamic terrorists centuries ago. And we have that situation happening with this unholy triumvirate of globalism, communism, and Islamism that could take over the country and certain municipalities like New York City, as we're seeing today. I want to make a focus on the House of Representatives right now because of that narrow majority. And if you're seeing that on the Senate side, the importance of these midterms coming up, we have Eric Swalwell, a Democrat out of California. Seems like he's on his way out with an ethics investigation. Also, Mr. Gonzalez from the great Lone Star state of Texas. Any updates there on how maybe the House, that side, will handle all of this? As sometimes we have some great people like you, Senator, right on Capitol Hill, but other people, you wonder why they end up winning office with their track records and their history.
Well, very slim majority in the House, and it's very concerning. You hate for things like this to happen, and unfortunately, when you put that many people together, you're going to have instances like this. But with losing one on both sides, it makes it very, very close when it comes to passing this reconciliation. That's what I'm concerned about, because we have to win this reconciliation. We have to get it passed through the House and through the Senate, because we have promised the American people that as Republicans, with a simple majority vote, we will get funding for DHS, funding for TSA, all the law enforcement agencies, Coast Guard, FEMA. We'll get that all done through reconciliation. It's been a promise that we've been promising for a month. We talked today about it in our caucus luncheons and meetings, and it's so important that we get this done. And so when you come down to a very close vote in the House, I think it's even going to be closer in the House than it will in the Senate, of us being able to get 50 votes.
And can you give us a look on, I guess, how the sausage is made, whether it's in those conference meetings, those caucus meetings, but also with your friends on the other side of the aisle? What's really the hesitation about the Save America Act? Because it seems like common sense, as most Republicans and Democrats across America seem to support this great legislation.
Well, the thing about the Democrats, since President Trump is even in his first term and now this term, it's more about politics than policy. They don't have any policy. They don't have anything they can lean on to help the American people. All they want to do is fight against us, that every day we're trying to make our country better for all citizens, not just Republicans, but Republicans, Democrats, Independents. And we want to support President Trump. President Trump got almost 80 million votes. And so we need to stand behind what he's doing, because he's making this country better and better every day. But the problem is, the Democrats, they don't care if this country survives. And we go back with Joe Biden, 4 years, open borders, the nonsense of what they pulled off with men and women's sports, the crazy things about men can have babies. I mean, it's just one thing after another. And if you just look at what they're trying to do now, is they just try to stall. And they say, well, we got a lot of people that can't get a photo ID. Well, if you can't get a photo ID in this country, you need to go to another country, because that's part of living in a constitutional republic, is being able to control and handle yourself, not let the government have to do everything for you. And at the end of the day, the Democrats want to make it harder and harder for people to vote, and that's the reason that they do not want this Save America Act.
A radical ideology that has led to literal deaths from illegal migrant crime, but also mutilations with the child surgeries. We've talked about this multiple times in person and over our interviews, and it's just horrible, as you've said, Senator, on many occasions. It's simply evil. Now, I'd like to point out to Huntsville, Alabama, as you seek to become the next governor of this great Yellowhammer state. Artemis II, what a success, and the space industry really booming right here in Alabama.
Yeah, a lot of good things are happening all over the state of Alabama, especially in Huntsville when it comes to making the rockets, making the lander. Artemis is a big part of Huntsville. Obviously, NASA has been a big part of Huntsville for years and years and years. It's good to see us going back and trying to get back into space, because it's the future. Now we got a couple more shots of Artemis before we actually land somebody on the moon. Hopefully it's this time next year we're able to do that. But I'm proud of what's going on in Huntsville for years. There's a lot of engineers there. We're growing leaps and bounds. Space Command's coming back to Huntsville. We've got a lot of small industry coming. A few weeks ago, we cut a ribbon just east or west of Huntsville, where we're making submarines now that's coming out of the big, beautiful bill. And there are a lot of great things happening in Alabama, and really proud of what the first Artemis shot came off last week. It was a huge success, perfect, as President Trump said, a big perfect launch and a big perfect trip around the moon and back. Looking forward to the next one in the very near future.
An amazing legacy, followed by the vision of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy and so many others who shot for the moon. We ended up among the stars and actually on the moon as well. Might have to do that again, along with going to Mars. So we look forward to all of that space exploration for all of humanity, but also, Senator, with your legislation as your tenure coming towards the last few months here in the United States Senate, some focus on the NIL with great legislation that you're putting through. Where does that stand right now, and how will these public-private partnerships really encompass making college sports great again?
Well, Student Athletic Act is a bill that we put forth, I guess, about a month ago. Now, Joe Manchin and I did a bill about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was very good, but unfortunately the Democrats wouldn't vote for it to try to help NIL out. They wanted to unionize athletes, which is definitely just the opposite direction we need to go. But the Student Athlete Act says that you get once you start playing sports, you got 5 years to play, no exceptions, no excuses. You got 5 to play 5. And the other one is you have 1 transfer. That's it. Now, if you transfer the second time, you got to sit out a year, which is the old rule. I got President Trump to executive order that bill just a few weeks ago. Now we got to get it passed through the Senate. I think we can get some Democrats to vote for it. We'll have to wait and see. But the NIL right now, name, image, and likeness is not being used as a federal judge expected it to be used, 6, 7 years ago. It's an all-out war now of how much people can raise money, how many times these kids can transfer. There's no education in college sports anymore. It's all about making money. And I don't care if the kid's making money, but the number one goal should be going to class, getting an education, because very, very few of these young men and women will play or make any money past college sports.
And those networks and also relationships made at their institutions will last them an entire lifetime. I know with my friends from my alma mater, the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, Final Four participant this year, that really has stood true in my career. Coach Tommy Tuberville, the senator and candidate for governor of Alabama, thank you for visiting us here on Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Thank you, Robert. God bless.
All right, a great interview there with the senator of Alabama, Tommy Tuberville, of course, running for governor. Looking forward to seeing that take place, of course, later this year. In the meantime, let's go to a few of our sponsors here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. As we go to Kalshi.com, there's a lot going on, of course, within the political trending sphere, if you'd like to call it that. Everything from the DHS shutdown to who will run for president in 2028, all the different things that people are betting, trading, checking out polls. You can do all of that with Kalshi.com. Also, the QR code you see there on your screen. Of course, you can go right to Kalshi through that way. You can go to Kalshi.com/RSBN, or you can download the app. So 3 ways for more than 1 million people using that great service there. Great sponsor here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. We'll talk more about Kalshi and what's trending out there in just a bit. In the meantime, let's go to Rumble Wallet, specifically Rumble Wallet, when a number of people just started using Rumble Wallet. I recently downloaded this app myself just to take a look at it as well. And if you've ever been curious about buying and investing in crypto or Bitcoin, stable coins, how about USAT? Or even gold-backed stablecoins, but felt like it was just too complicated. Rumble Wallet is an easy way to get started. You can actually buy, sell, and manage your cryptocurrencies all in one place, and the app is super straightforward. What really makes Rumble Wallet unique is that you can use it to tip your favorite creators like us and support the Freedom First community we've built here on Rumble. And getting started is simple. Just download the Rumble Wallet app, sign up with your existing Rumble account, and there's no need for a new login. You just complete a few security steps and you're set up in minutes. You can start with just a few dollars, and with this new feature called MoonPay that's built into Rumble Wallet, you can easily buy crypto using your credit card, debit card, or bank wire. So if you've been thinking about the advantages of crypto, download Rumble Wallet now. And you can click our link in the description or search Rumble Wallet in your app store. Download Rumble Wallet today and move your assets to where they belong, in your hands, in your control. Rumble Wallet is obviously a technology provider only and not a custodial service. You can see terms at wallet.rumble.com. Rumble Wallet, you can download that, check it out, peruse the site, and go from there. Rumble Wallet, great sponsor here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. It's 12/19, Wednesday, April 15th, tax day. Usually when you say tax day, there's a lot of frowning going on, but under President Trump's working families tax cuts, there's a lot of good that's happening, of course. The no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security benefits, and also a decent amount of refunds happening out there this year. Coming up at the top of the broadcast, or at least the top of the hour, at 1 o'clock, Karoline Leavitt will hold that press briefing at the White House. And attending that briefing today is the Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent, and the SBA administrator. So the Small Business Administrator, Kelly Loeffler, will also join Karoline Leavitt. And then after that, there will be the Q&A from the press like usual. So thanks again for live streaming here on Right Side Broadcasting Network, whether you're watching live or on replay right now. Glad you're with us. Tomorrow, President Trump will go from Washington all the way out to the Silver State in Nevada for the roundtable on no tax on tips. And then on Friday, the 47th president will travel to Arizona to deliver a speech at the tvOS event there. We'll have boots on the ground, getting ready for that live coverage coming up earlier in the day on Friday, even though the speech, it's a bit, I'll get back to you with the timing on all of it because there's just a lot going on Friday. Looking forward to you live streaming with us, though, as we'll have that live in the Grand Canyon State. All right, so let's do this. Let's go to the Vice President right now. The Vice President was in Georgia just yesterday. So in case you missed it, we're going to dip into some of that coverage that we aired yesterday just for a few minutes, and we'll come back with some more live interviews right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network.
You are a practicing Catholic. You're, despite your language, you're attempting to be a faithful Catholic.
That's right. That's right.
I think it was well placed, if I may say.
It.
I'm sure you've seen that the Vatican and the Pope and the President have been in the news lately. So as a Catholic, what does it feel like to be, in the middle of that?
I thought I was going to get easy questions. This is kind of a tough question here.
Nope, no easy ones there.
So here's the thing about this. So first of all, you will sometimes hear people say, well, the Vatican, the church, whether it's the Protestant church, the Catholic church, they should preach the gospel, they should ignore public policy. I actually don't agree with that. I actually think that it's a good thing when Christian leaders, whether they're Catholic or Protestant, part of preaching the gospel is talking about how the gospel applies to the issues of the day. So I've never been one of these people who say that you should never have, Christian leadership not talking about politics, or frankly, political leaders not talking about their Christian faith. But I do think that we have to remember that, each of us has our own role. I'm the Vice President of the United States. The fundamental way I understand my role is that I'm trying to take the lessons, the moral truths that are rooted in Christianity, and I'm trying to apply them to a whole host of complicated real-world scenarios. Thank you. So my job is to apply moral truth to try to do the best thing for the American people. That's my job, and that's the President of the United States' job, and of course, he's the person who leads our administration. The Pope's job is to preach the gospel, okay? And again, I think that sometimes in the context, it doesn't bother me, even when I disagree with him. And I have a lot of respect for the Pope. I like him. I admire him. I've gotten to know him a little bit. It doesn't bother me when he speaks on issues of the day, frankly, even when I disagree with how he's applying a particular principle. So the most obvious example is it has frustrated me that some of the Catholic clergy have attacked mercilessly the Trump administration on immigration. It is a constant idea that somehow everything that the Trump administration does when it comes to securing our borders is inhumane. And my constant response to that is, how is it humane to allow drug traffickers and sex traffickers to bring little kids across the southern border?
Amen.
How is that humane? But again, I'd almost rather have the conversation. So I kind of like, even when there's disagreement, I like it when the Pope comments on questions of immigration. I like it when the Pope talks about abortion. I like it when the Pope talks about matters of war and peace, because I think that at the very least it invites a conversation. So I think some people, their reaction to this is to say, well, he shouldn't have said that. And look, there are certainly things that the Pope has said in the last few months that I disagree with. Let me just take one very concrete example related to this conflict in Iran. So the Pope said something where he said, and I'm going to try to remember the exact quote, but he said that God is never on the side of those who wield the sword. God is never on the side of those who wield the sword. I'm pretty sure that he said that exact statement. Now, On the one hand, again, I like that the Pope is an advocate for peace. I think that's certainly one of his roles. On the other hand, how can you say that God is never on the side of those who wield the sword? Was God on the side of the Americans who liberated France from the Nazis? Was God on the side of the Americans who liberated Holocaust camps and liberated those innocent people from, those who had survived the Holocaust? I certainly think the answer is yes, and I agree. Jesus Christ does not. I agree. Jesus Christ certainly does not support genocide. Whoever yelled that out from the dark, he certainly does not. I think that's pretty easy. I think that's a pretty easy principle. Okay, so here's a guy. Let me just say this. This is a guy. No. First of all, random dude who's shouting. Can I finish my point and then I'll respond to what you just shouted? Is that okay? Okay, great.
Yeah, can we give him 1 second to answer this?
So let me just finish this question on the Pope, and then I want to respond to what this guy said. So, number one, when the Pope says that God is never on the side of those who wield the sword, there is more than 1,000-year tradition of just war theory. Okay? Now, we can, of course, have disagreements about whether this or that conflict is just, but I think that it's important, in the same way that it's important for the Vice President of the United States to be careful when I talk about matters of public policy, I think it's very, very important for the Pope to be careful when he talks about matters of theology. And I think that one of these issues here is that there has been, again, hey, random dude screaming, I told you I'd respond to your point. I just want to respond to this question first. But I think one of the issues here is that if you're going to opine on matters of theology, you've got to be careful. You've got to make sure it's anchored in the truth. And that's one of the things that I try to do. And it's certainly something I would expect from the clergy, whether they're Catholic or Protestant. Now, to respond to this guy here, he said, I believe he said the administration supports a genocide in Gaza. And here's my response to that. When we came in, the humanitarian situation in Gaza was an absolute catastrophe. You know who's the person who got a peace agreement in Gaza? Donald J. Trump. So if you want to complain about what happened in Gaza, so if you want, sir, to complain about what happened in Gaza, why don't you complain about Joe Biden and the last administration? We're the administration that solved that problem.
All right, so if you'd like to watch that on replay, you can, of course. The vice president in Georgia just yesterday for that tvOS event. It's about an hour long of a clip. We've been dipping in and out of that clip throughout this broadcast as we get ready to go to the White House here for Karoline Leavitt's press conference, of course, as it's tax day in America. A lot of smiles on faces. Usually it's not a smiling kind of day, but for many, it is. We'll get more into that in just a little bit. Let's go to some of our sponsors in the meantime as we await a few live interviews, including All Family Pharmacy right here. So with everything going on in the world right now, with the supply chain issues, global instability, and shortages that nobody's really talking about, your access to medication is something that should be top of mind. Most people don't think about it until they need something and can't get it. And by then, it's just too late. So we've been recommending All Family Pharmacy for a while now, and this is exactly why. They're an independent American pharmacy that helps you stay stocked and prepared. They carry hard-to-find medications like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, mebendazole, methylene blue, and NAD+, along with more than 400 everyday prescriptions for blood pressure, thyroid, diabetes, and more. And they make it simple. Already have a prescription? Your doctor can send it straight to them. But if you don't have one, you go online, you fill out a quick form, a licensed doctor reviews it, and if appropriate, they'll handle that prescription and it ships right to your door. This is all about being prepared before you need it, not scrambling after the fact. The people who have what they need in a crisis are always the ones who simply planned ahead. So you don't have to wait until the shelves are empty. You can get ahead of all of it now. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN to search for what you and your family might need and save 10% at checkout when you use the RSBN10 promo code. Let's also go to one of our other great sponsors here on Right Side. When the dollar's convertibility into gold ended in 1971, gold was fixed at $35 an ounce. If you fast forward to today, the U.S. dollar has lost more than 85% of its purchasing power. Gold, on the other hand, has increased in value by more than 12,000%. That's why central banks are buying gold at record levels. And here at RSBN, we encourage you to consider diversifying your savings with physical gold from Birch Gold Group. But this all starts with education. Birch Gold just announced their Learn and Earn Precious Metals event. It's a free online event that rewards you for learning the basics of investing in precious metals. You can sign up to get free silver on your next purchase. Get even larger incentives as you go. And the more you learn, the more you can earn. But you must act now, as this special event only runs through April 30th. The dollar lost its anchor in 1971. You don't have to lose yours. Text the word Trump to the number 989898 to join Birch Gold's Learn and Earn Precious Metals event by April 30th. Text Trump to 989898 today. Great sponsors here on Right Side as we get ready to go to that building that you see behind me, the White House, for the press conference. In the meantime, joining us now, all the way out there in California, is the host of the Orange Report. We're going to go to Cara Davis, who's joining us now live once again. Cara, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Good to see you, Matt. Happy Tax Day.
Yeah, happy Tax Day. It's hard to say that, but this time around, it's easier to say that, right? So let's get into it.
I live in California. No, it's not.
Well, no, exactly. So let's talk about California. I know that your state, you have nearly 40 million residents. It's the largest state in the union, even more populous than Texas. And I understand gearing up the gubernatorial race right now that Eric is gone. You have Chad Bianco, the Riverside County Sheriff. You have Steve Hilton, who has a long resume, both Republicans. Who are you going for and why as we start this debate on which one will be the governor?
Well, it's an uphill battle for either of them to be the governor, first of all, because they are both Republicans. And we have a very strange primary system here. We have a jungle primary, which means it's a top two battle. It's nonpartisan, so we don't have party primaries. The people who receive the most votes in June, the top two people, will move forward. And so it's been impossible to get a Republican to poke through in the primaries, but this might be the first year we do it. Steve Hilton, and he's my candidate. I have known Steve for 10 years now, and I've known his love for California and his love for America. And so I was thrilled to support him when he got in. Chad Bianco, as you said, the Riverside Sheriff, is a strong candidate and a strong law and order candidate as well. He doesn't have nearly as much name recognition as Steve or backers. And the polls are showing Steve Hilton after, you might be interested to hear this, after the Eric Swalwell disaster fiasco, we've had our first fresh polling be released, has been released. Tom Steyer, the Democrat billionaire, has seemed to have sucked up all of Eric's votes. But Steve Hilton also was propelled to the top of the polling's fresh polling today has him at 26%, above Tom Steyer at about 22%. Chad Bianco is all the way down in the single digits at 9% right now. I think that's how the field is going to shape out. We'll see. We have, here in California, I think it's like $1,000 to register to run for governor. We have 60 people on the list,
Wow.
Yeah. So, but there's really 7 top contenders. So we'll see if some of those lower polling Democrats drop out. I expect them to, and then we will really see the race condense.
Exactly. And we've had Kate Monroe here on the broadcast, and her candidate is Chad Bianco. But at the end of the day, we have two Republicans, Steve Hilton, Chad Bianco. If Hilton wins and gets into the Republican primary, or if Chad does, a lieutenant governor situation, maybe Hilton, Bianco, Hilton. You never know, right? Hey.
It can't work that way because lieutenant governor is a separate position and you have to run for it. And you have to file for it. Filing is over. Ballots are being printed. Lieutenant governor. We have a great Republican candidate for lieutenant governor in Gloria Romero. a Democrat who walked away. She is a legendary California politician, walked away for Trump because she was such a Trump supporter. And she's on Steve's ticket, actually, but running separately as a lieutenant governor. So that's not a possibility, but there could be a possibility for either of these men to share, cabinet positions. I would love, to be honest, looking at the polling, Chad can't poke through. The worst he can do is probably split that vote. But he could lend his support to a winning campaign.
So we'll see what happens. And we have interview requests in to Steve Hilton, to Chad Bianco, getting that worked out. And also for Kate Monroe, of course, she's almost like your counterpart. You both are Republicans, conservatives, but still at the end of the day, a Republican governor in the state of California. Is this something that a lot of people are talking about right now? Is this something that,
yes.
Or is it a pipe dream, really?
It's not a pipe dream, not this year. If you had asked me 2 years ago or 4 years ago, I would have said yes. Now, I want you to remember, Matt, I was on your show actually talking about the LA fires a year ago and talking about how it really changed the mood of Californians, because a lot of those people who were affected, it was sort of the last of the donor class for Newsom and for the California Democrats. So the mood here has shifted. Spencer Pratt, former reality star, is running for mayor in Los Angeles, and he is killing it. Yes, we do have a possibility to elect a Republican governor, but I want everyone to understand what happened to Eric Swalwell this past week is because of this race. To my mind, it's because of Steve Hilton. He is polling towards the top. He's polling above everybody, which is incredible. And so what has to happen because of our jungle primaries is the Democrats can't afford, right, Chad Bianco to surge and then take that second spot, and then we have two. They can't afford that. It is the worst possible situation for Democrats is for California to go red, because as everybody knows, Matt, as everybody has been witness to over the last couple of months, we see that California, we're the king of fraud here. We're the king of financial fraud, government fraud, federal aid fraud, and voter fraud. And this state feeds a lot of the corruption, probably almost all of it, in the rest of the United States, particularly when it comes to Washington, D.C. So if this state flips red, the gravy train shuts down. This is like DEFCON 4 for the Democrat Party. They absolutely will throw everything at these two candidates, and that's why they tanked Swalwell, because Swalwell was leading he was leading Steve with 46%. And if Swalwell and Steve Hilton had gone through, all the Hilton campaign had to do, and all that research has been out there forever. Conservatives have been reporting on it forever. Just the press didn't pick it up. But then all that would have come out and Hilton would have sailed to victory. So that was definitely a Democrat operation to take Swalwell out. They are panicking, and that's a good sign for Republicans in California.
Oh, it would be beautiful to see it. It would be beautiful to see whether it's Steve Hilton, Chad Bianco, whoever. Looking forward to hopefully seeing a governor that is on the right side of history out there in California. Now, I know that you just launched your show, The Orange Report, for the county there, Orange County. Can you talk to us about some of the stories that are happening right now that may have a little bit of a national kind of exposure or interest?
Thank you, Matt. Well, we have a lot going on here in Orange County, which is why I chose to do a show Orange County based, because a lot of what happens here is what's going on in the United States. One of our biggest stories that we just finished working on was these beach landings that we have had, where illegals are landing their boats on the beaches. And we're hosting the Olympics in 2028, supposedly. So we don't know how that's going to work. Now the Border Patrol was able, after our story, was able to work with the mayor there, and they got a situation set up where they'll be monitoring the beaches more. And we're very proud of that. But we've got other things going on here. Biggest thing, though, I think, and it's not just here in Orange County, but everywhere, is voter fraud, election integrity. We have one voter ID measure on the ballot for the state. We're trying to qualify two. So we're waiting to see if the second one qualifies. So if the first one doesn't, look good to voters, maybe the second one will. We're just trying to cover the spread. That one's already qualified. That's going to change the game. Here in Orange County, a woman registered her dog to vote. in the 2022 and 2024, 2 elections, 2022 and 2024, the dog did vote. The vote was counted.
Wow.
And we're finally digging into that. Turns out this lady was a Republican trying to make a point. She's still going to be prosecuted anyway. But here's the thing that is really hilarious. Matt, you're going to get a kick out of this. Our Board of Supervisors, which is the governing body for your county, heard about that story, and they were asked to support a resolution to purge the voter rolls of non-human voters. That's what one of the conservative members said. Let's just forget about the controversial stuff. Let's just purge the rolls of non-human voters. We have proof that there's at least one dog on our voter rolls. And the Board of Supervisors voted against it.
Wow.
They voted against it. So I want to encourage everybody, find out what's going on at your county Board of Supervisors. Every county has one. It might not be called a Board of Supervisors. It might be called a council, but every county has one. That's the most powerful governing body in your county. It's the one closest to you. Remember, Donald Trump didn't shut down your schools and businesses. Your county did that to you. Your local government did that to you. If you don't know where to start, go to a meeting and just pick one. School board, city council, just pick one. It will change your life.
It's so wild to see all of that, Kira. And specifically, I had one other question on my mind that I have to ask, or at least a statement to bring up. You said that there were illegal aliens that were coming up with the boats onto the beaches there. You know, President Trump refers to it. He goes, 98% of the drugs or the illegal immigrants coming in by water have been taken care of. But it's that 2% that I was wondering about. It might be that in California. But the point is, we saw how conservative media or conservative voices spoke up, and it got national attention, and the Border Patrol acted on it. We have about 20 seconds. Just your reaction on that.
It matters to stand up. It matters to tell the truth, even when the whole world is against you. Think about how many people blew the whistle on fraud for years and years. And then one kid with an iPhone and determination came along and amplified all that. And now we're all talking about it. It matters that you stand up and tell the truth, even when it's unpopular. Stand on the truth, because the truth will always be honored eventually. So make sure you're holding. This is the era of accountability, Matt. So let's all get in the game. We can't depend on one man or one politician. You are the cavalry.
And the truth will set you free. Cara Davis, host of the Orange Report out there in the Golden State, California. Cara, good to see you. Thank you so much.
Good to see you, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, good stuff there. You know, it's always good to see how things are going in various states across the union. Let's go to a few of our sponsors in the meantime. Let's go to Plan Select right now. Are you getting all of the benefits you deserve from your Medicare Advantage plan? Many people don't realize their plan may include valuable extras that can save you thousands of dollars every year. So the question now is, do you qualify? And the only way you find that out, give them a call, 877-664-8133. With the right Medicare Advantage plan, you could receive a gym membership at no cost to help you stay active and healthy. If you need a ride, many plans include transportation services with up to 60 rides per year to your doctor's appointments or pharmacy. And some plans actually also offer meal delivery programs with up to 28 meals delivered each year at no cost. So it's perfect after a hospital stay or when you just need a little extra help. So you may also qualify for an over-the-counter allowance of up to $800 per year for everyday essentials like vitamins, first aid supplies, cold and flu medicine, and dental hygiene products. I might have to get some medicine myself. I'm feeling like I got a cold coming on. So trying to take care of business with that. But anyway, and that's not all. Certain plans provide a grocery card with up to $3,600 per year to help pay for healthy food and household essentials. Call 877-664-8133 to see if you qualify. Again, the big question is, are you taking advantage of everything your plan offers? So licensed agents will review your options and help make sure you're getting every benefit available to you. Call that number you see on your screen, 877-664-8133. Let's go to one more sponsor here on Right Side as we get ready to go to the White House. It's All Family Pharmacy, and with everything going on in the world right now, supply chain issues, global instability, you know, shortages that not many are talking about, your access to medication is just something that should be top of mind because most people don't think about it until they need something and just can't get it. And by then, it's just too late. So we've been recommending All Family Pharmacy for a while now, and this is exactly why. They are an independent American pharmacy that helps you stay stocked and prepared. So they carry the hard-to-find medications like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, mebendazole, methylene blue, and NAD+, along with more than 400 everyday prescriptions for blood pressure, thyroid, diabetes, and more. And they make it simple. If you already have a prescription, your doctor can send it straight to them. If you don't have one, go online, fill out a quick form. A licensed doctor will review it, and if appropriate, they handle the prescription and then ship it directly to you. This is about being prepared before you need it, not scrambling after the fact. So the people who have what they need in a crisis are usually the ones who simply planned ahead. So you don't have to wait till the shelves are empty. You can get ahead of it now. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN to search for what you and your family might need and save 10% at checkout when you use the RSBN 10 promo code. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. It's 12:45. We're about 15 minutes away from going to the White House. If it's a little delayed, we have enough to talk about here as we stand by for that event. And speaking of events, tomorrow, so that's tomorrow, Thursday, April 16th, President Trump on the way to Nevada for a no tax on tips roundtable in a place that is Vegas. It's Las Vegas, Nevada, where he'll be. Of course, that's a big industry there when it comes to hospitality and all of that in Vegas. So President Trump will be there. Then he'll go to Arizona the next day, so on Friday. So make sure to catch our coverage on Friday live from Arizona. It's going to be nice to sit here at the studio, watch the screen that's below the camera right here, and watch Robert McNeely interview a number of you out there in Arizona, RSBN old school days, in the sense of course, we're going to be out there covering rallies and events, but it's just nice to see it coming up here on Friday, April 17th. So make sure you tune in for that. We'll have a number of live interviews here as well. We're lining them up as we speak during some of these commercial breaks on this phone right here. So speaking of interviews, let's go to Seth Keshel, the great election expert and author, joined us just yesterday. President Trump recently spoke about him on Truth Social, as did Newt Gingrich. So let's go to Seth Keshel's interview from just yesterday. Let's go to Seth Keshel joining us live right now to speak to us about all things elections. Seth, thanks again for joining us here on Right Side.
Well, good afternoon, Matt. Good morning here in Arizona. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, same to you. Can you talk to us about that post? When you saw that post, what ran through your mind? And then also, can you break down the numbers that are within that post that has been seen by a lot of people?
Sure. Well, I was in Oxford, Mississippi, watching Ole Miss play LSU in baseball. It was the 20-year anniversary of the Ole Miss baseball SEC tournament champions. And I was hanging out with some of my old teammates, and Rachel came up to me with the True Social post with President Trump talking about me again. And he was referencing the context of that. He's just referencing voter registration trends in North Carolina specifically. So for the first time in history, Republicans lead voter registration there in North Carolina. Now, he may have been watching an outdated clip, because the registration advantage for the GOP is now over 10,000. So that appears to be a couple months old. But either way, the president's taking note that North Carolina and most states that are receiving transplants from the Northeast or from the failed states out on the West Coast are overwhelmingly Republican leaning.
Which is obviously a great thing coming into the midterms, but also within the framework of the Save America Act. What's your take right now? What are the things that you're focusing on, Seth? Because as the president said, as Newt Gingrich said, you are an election expert now, becoming more on that national scale. So can you just walk us through some of the things that you're looking at, whether it's from state to state or nationally?
I'm focused on long-term success, identifying pathways in which Republicans can take over everything from the county level all the way up to the federal government. And I think that we have plenty of opportunities for growth. We've been watching the deliberations in the Senate with the Save America Act, which is a complete catastrophe. But I'm focused on helping people understand the states that they live in, the political problems they're in, understanding what types of election laws are on the books that limit certain types of candidates from being successful. So being able to keep tabs on all of this requires a great degree of study and understanding and be able to document that in a way that people can understand. Of course, I have the book, The American War on Election Corruption, that we talked about last month here on the show, and that's done really well. More than 7,000 units sold nationally since it released on March the 5th, and that would be in print, audio, and ebook.
Awesome to see that. Awesome to see those numbers. Now, when we look at a state, your home state right now in Arizona. Tell us the latest there. We know President Trump will be there on Friday. Maybe you'll be at that event, but what does it look like in Maricopa County and all of that moving forward?
Well, Maricopa County is extremely important on a national scale. For those of us who are election integrity folks, we consider Maricopa County the ground zero of the election integrity crisis, thanks to its instrumental role on November 3rd, 2020, being called with very little of the vote counted. And of course, that was the signal to stop counts in the Rust Belt Midwest. Maricopa County's 3/5 of the vote in Arizona, combined with Pima County, we're looking at 3/4 of the vote from just 2 counties. Extremely important to understand how elections are manipulated in the mail. But Maricopa County and Pima both have a slight dim lean here in the last couple months because they're really amping up their voter registration efforts ahead of the primaries. I'm not sure that it's going to be sustained based on the nationwide trend since November of 2024, but both parties are busy registering voters. Candidates are busy getting ready for primaries.
There were some recent cases being brought up at the Supreme Court. I believe it was 14 states talking about, mail-in ballots and that kind of thing. Did you monitor that? What's your take from what happened there at the Supreme Court in D.C. just about 2 weeks ago?
Well, yeah, Watson versus Republican National Committee. Watson being the Secretary of State of Mississippi, trying to defend the state's laws that allow for counting of late arriving mail-in ballots. The good news is all 6 Republican appointed Supreme Court justices seem to be pretty upset about the concept of election day not really meaning anything anymore. So I think they're signaling that there is going to be some relief about the late arriving mail-in ballots, which will really kneecap some states like California. If you remember, they declared 2 House seats flipped away from Republicans in December of 2024, almost to Christmas. So anyway, we have a lot of progress that is yet to be found, but I think that we might have some signal coming our way through the Supreme Court.
And then let's talk about California a little bit more. The Republican, the gubernatorial race there, of course, Steve Hilton, Chad Bianco, and others. Have you kind of looked at that as well, or are you just focused really in on numbers and registration for Republicans and that kind of thing?
Well, I focus on voter registration trends, but I've never thought at any one time that you would have 2 Republicans duking it out to be governor of California. That was a bunch of junk food that people were unfortunately consuming, not realizing there would soon be an effort to get Democrats to drop out. And as we saw, the big effort was Nancy Pelosi making sure that Eric Swalwell had to find his way out of the race, and that will further help the Democrats at least nominate one guy.
Exactly. So we'll see what happens there in the state of California. And then finally, just moving forward to the midterm election, we heard that there's going to be an RNC midterm convention. Obviously, that usually happens in presidential cycles. Your thoughts about something like that, just to rally the base? What do you think really needs to happen to get us over the finish line to win the midterms?
Well, look, winning the midterms is always hard for the president's party. This is a case of unrealistic expectations that we see online, thinking there's going to be any sort of a red wave. The best case scenario is a successful defense of the majorities, and that is a very difficult task given how small that GOP majority was to begin with, 220 to 215 as elected. There's a good reason it's small, and the gerrymandering, of course, is one reason. The blue states have more effectively gerrymandered their states than the red states have, which, of course, both sides have done this. But the average loss in House seats for the president's party since 1934 is 27. In 20 out of 23 midterms since 1934, the president's party loses seats. So what really needs to be done, you have to have reasons to come vote for people. The House is not to blame for where the SAVE Act is today. That's a credit to Speaker Johnson for getting that through with a small majority. But the Senate is now exposing itself to be potentially trimmed as a majority. I don't see how they're going to lose the Senate right now based on the races that are up. But you have to have the voters motivated to come out and vote for one, or you're going to get a depressed turnout. And number 2, the finite resources that are available need to be channeled into the seats that can actually be won in a 2026 midterm cycle. So we shouldn't be targeting safe Democrat seats in a 2026 cycle. The seats that normally flip in the House are seats that have vacancies, whether you've got deaths or retirements, or you can really spot them based on the previous election's results. Like in Arizona, we have 2 seats that I think are playable, and both of them are Republican defenses. Whereas in Florida or Texas, the Republicans are on offense trying to pick up seats. So having a clear picture of what the map looks like is the first starting point, and I'm not really so sure that everyone has that.
Where can people follow you? Where can people find your book?
Well, people can find the book on Amazon, The American War on Election Corruption, with foreword by Newt Gingrich. It's available in print, audio, and ebook. Online, I'm on Telegram, True Social, Twitter. Most commonly used handle is @RealSKeshel. And my Substack is Captain K's Corner, a national bestseller, actually a worldwide bestseller, and that's CaptainK.us.
Awesome. Seth Keshel, election expert, author, and military as well. So thank you again for your service.
No, thank you.
Retired military right there, author, patriot, Seth Keshel, the election expert himself. Great to see him here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. The White House actually just released audio from the Strait of Hormuz as the blockade is fully implemented. We're going to take a listen to that in just a minute. Also, speaking of the White House, a lot of details coming out about tax day, so we're going to share that with you in just a minute. But let's go to a few of our sponsors in the meantime here on Right Side Broadcasting Network, including Kalshi.com/RSBN. So a lot of questions on there for people to bet, trade, or just check out various topics with polls, including when will the DHS funding be back? Right now, it's still a partial government shutdown that we're dealing with. Maybe there's some questions as well, I'm sure, about the Save America Act. Will that pass? I did recall seeing that last week on there, Kalshi.com. So if you go to Kalshi.com/RSBN or check out the app, you can just download it or go on the QR code. There's 3 ways to get you to Kalshi.com. Great sponsor here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. A lot of political trends happening. And outside of politics, I'm sure a lot of people like music or movies or technology, faith, all sorts of things, including weather. People are actually betting and trading and just checking out polls on, will it be 72 degrees today in New York? Go ahead and check out some of the interesting stuff there. Kalshi.com/RSBN. Also, CovePure.com/RSBN. You've heard us speak about Cove Pure before, and if that water scare in Flint, Michigan, and you remember in East Palestine, Ohio, weren't enough to get you to make the switch, this might, because more than 176 million Americans, and there's a total of about 347 million people in our great country. 176 million Americans are drinking tap water with PFAs in it. They're man-made chemicals used in food packaging, non-stick cookware, firefighting foam. Scientists call them forever chemicals because once they're in your body, they stay there, they don't break down, and they're linked to hormone disruption, immune damage, and increased cancer risk. But here's the part that is making a lot of people upset. The EPA, they set legal limits for PFAs in drinking water back in 2024. But the water systems around our country have until 2031 to comply. So that's 5 whole years from now. And until that deadline arrives, a utility can be operating above the legal limit right now and isn't required to notify you. So you're just drinking that tap water. Hopefully not. Tastes awful, the aftertaste, right? So that's why every single household needs Cove Pure. The government knows these chemicals are harmful enough to regulate. They're just not making anyone act on it quite yet, which means if you want clean, healthy water, you're going to have to do it yourself. Cove Pure was engineered exactly for this. Unlike the normal pitcher filters you get at the store, their Clearwave reverse osmosis technology is certified to remove up to 99.9% of contaminants. So it's those PFAs, the heavy metals, fluoride, pharmaceuticals. It's all filtering particles hundreds of thousands of times smaller than a single human hair. And the best part about Cove Pure is they make it so easy. It sits right on your countertop, as you see right there. You don't have to drill any holes or call someone to install it. You just plug it in. You can even get whatever temperature water you want, as you see right there, specifically hot, cold, or warm. So that's just with a tap of a button. You don't have to wait till 2031. Take control of your water quality right now. You can head to covepure.com/RSBN. And because you're a viewer of this broadcast, you'll get $250 off right now. That's covepure.com/RSBN. We're approaching 1 o'clock. That's the time for the next situation here live on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Of course, the White House press briefing. All right, the White House, speaking of them, they just released a video. Actually, it's audio with some photos from the Strait of Hormuz as the blockade is fully implemented. Let's take a listen.
The U.S. has announced a formal blockade of Iranian ports and coastal areas. This is illegal action. All vessels are advised to immediately return to port if leaving and discontinue transit to Iran if that is your next port of call. Do not attempt to breach the blockade. Vessels Vessels will be boarded for interdiction and seizure, transiting to or from an Iranian port. Turn around and prepare to be boarded. If you do not comply with this blockade, we will use force. The whole of the United States Navy is ready to force compliance. Now.
Yeah, I'm not messing with the U.S. Navy, you know what I mean? That's from the Navy there, letting all ships know what's up. So that's the Strait of Hormuz, the latest there. The White House just posted that minutes ago. Speaking of minutes, we're looking at maybe a few more minutes than 1 o'clock. As soon as we'll see that live feed, we'll take you to the White House for the press briefing there. Again, today's press briefing, all about tax day, but also you'll hear the questions and answers, of course, of all the various stories that are happening in the 24/7 news cycle. But attending the briefing today is Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent and the Small Business Administrator Kelly Loeffler as well. So I'm sure Karoline will probably start the press briefing, or at least the opening remarks, and then pass it over to Scott and Kelly. And then from there, I'm sure they'll be taking questions on various stories. Specifically, the White House has released a lot of information about tax day. We're going to dive into that in just a minute. Let's first revisit the Vice President in Georgia just yesterday. As I prepare those new notes from the White House, we'll be sharing that with you in just a few minutes. So let's go to the Vice President. In case you missed it, this is yesterday in Georgia. And then as soon as I get all that taken care of, we'll be sharing more information with you as we get ready to go live to Washington, D.C. Again, if you'd like to follow us on Truth Social, though, it's at RSBN or at RSB Network on X. If you'd like to follow me on X, it's at Matthew US Media. And then on Truth Social, it is at Matthew Alvarez. All right, let's go to a couple sponsors first before we go back to Georgia. All Family Pharmacies, one of our great sponsors there. With everything going on in the world right now, supply chain issues, global instability, shortages that nobody's talking about, your access to medication is something that should be top of mind, because most people don't think about it until they need something and can't get it. And by then, it's just too late. So we've been recommending All Family Pharmacy for a while now, and this is exactly why. They're an independent American pharmacy that helps you stay stocked and prepared. They carry hard-to-find medications like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, mebendazole, methylene blue, and NAD+, along with more than 400 everyday prescriptions for blood pressure, thyroid, diabetes, and more. And they make it simple. If you already have a prescription, your doctor can send it straight to them. If you don't have one, go online, fill out a quick form. A licensed doctor reviews it, and if appropriate, they handle the prescription and it ships right to your door. So this is all about being prepared before you need it, not scrambling after the fact. The people who have what they need in a crisis, of course, are the ones who simply planned ahead. So don't wait until the shelves are empty. You can go and get ahead of all of this right now by going to allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You see it right there on your screen. And use the RSBN 10 promo code for that 10% off with All Family Pharmacy. Let's also go to Birch Gold Group. Speaking of All Family Pharmacy, I think I need a lozenge. I'm getting a little bit of a sore throat, but I'm going to keep it on here. As we are with Birch Gold Group. With everything going on in the world right now, supply chain issues, global instability, shortages that nobody's talking about, your access to medication is something that should be top of mind. And of course, we got to go back to Birch Gold Group. When the dollar's convertibility into gold ended in 1971, gold was fixed at $35 an ounce. So if you fast forward to today, and the US dollar has lost over 85% of its purchasing power, gold, on the other hand, has increased in value by more than 12,000%. That's why central banks are buying gold at record levels. And here at RSBN, we encourage you to consider diversifying your savings with physical gold from Birch Gold Group. But it starts with education. Birch Gold just announced their Learn and Earn Precious Metals event. This free online event rewards you for learning the basics of investing in precious metals. You can sign up to get free silver on your next purchase, get even larger incentives as you go. So the more you learn, the more you can earn. But you must act now, because this is a special event that runs only through April 30th. The dollar lost its anchor in 1971. You don't have to lose yours, so text the word Trump to the number 989898. Again, you'll get a free info kit on gold, but also you'll be signing up for the Birch Gold's Learn and Earn Precious Metals event by April 30th. Text Trump to 989898 today. All right, 104 Wednesday, April 15th, awaiting that press conference there at the White House. We're going to gather some notes here that the White House just released. a press release, and we'll be sharing that with you in just a minute. In the meantime, let's go back to the vice president in Georgia. In case you missed it, we're going to air that for just a few minutes.
And by the way, not only was our administration like the administration that solved the problem, but the president. Excuse me, sir. Right now, you see more humanitarian aid coming into Gaza than it has any time in the past 5 years, because we have taken that situation seriously. And that's one of the things that I'm proud of about our administration, is whether it's there or Thailand and Cambodia, we have consistently tried as much as we can to solve these problems, not just complain about them like the guy who just ran away angry.
You know, JD, I'll never forget your speech at Charlie's memorial, and you talked about how your faith in the wake of Charlie's assassination has become so central to you. You talk about it more, and now you're even writing a book about it.
Sure.
Tell us about it.
Yeah,
what's it called? It's called the Wake.
Well, it's called Communion, and you know, I think the subtitle is Finding My Way Back to Faith.
Yes.
And you know, here's why I wanted to write this book, Andrew, because you know, I think that like a lot of you, there was a point in my life. I mean, you're probably this is probably a much more Christian audience than maybe I was when I was a 22-year-old college student. I just gotten out of the Marine Corps, and I realized that I was sort of winning this game of life in one sense, and I was losing it in the way that mattered. And, you know, I was raised in a Christian household. I was raised in a very sort of Pentecostal family. You know, our church had really good music and amazing people. And one of the things I love about evangelical culture in the United States of America is just how welcoming it is of everybody, right? And you know that. You're an evangelical Christian. And so the thing is, I hadn't been properly formed in my faith. And so I got to the Marine Corps, and by the time I left the Marine Corps and it was starting college, I called myself an atheist. And I kind of went through this period of being an angry atheist, and then I realized when I got to a point where I thought to myself, what actually matters in life? It's not getting into a law school, which I had done. It's not making a lot of money. It's not credentials. It's not good jobs. It's being a good person. It's, you know, I'd fallen in love with this, thank you. I'd fallen in love with a girl, and that girl eventually became my wife and the mother to our now 4 children. And I remember thinking to myself, like, she doesn't care whether I make a certain amount of money. She wants me to be a good husband. She wants me to be a good father. She wants me to be a virtuous person. And I started to realize
she wants date night.
Yes, she does want that, which is hard when you're vice president of the United States. But what I realized is that the philosophy of secular liberalism, it was achieve. Get as many credentials, make as much money as possible, and that left me feeling empty. And meanwhile, it was this faith that I had discarded as a kid, which actually provided a real sense of meaning and purpose. And then I talked to a priest, and this priest was like, you know what? If you think that the Christian faith is right about all these moral questions, maybe it's right because there's a witness element to it. Like maybe the fact that it's right about morality and about virtue and about sin, maybe that means it's also right about the fact that Jesus Christ was the Son of God. Maybe it's also right that Jesus Christ died and rose from the dead on the 3rd day. Like maybe these things that appeal to you about the Christian faith come from the deeper truth of the Christian faith. And that kind of got me down a pathway of where eventually I was baptized and became a very devout Christian. And at this point, amen. Thank you.
Amen.
But, you know, I thought, first of all, a lot of people have asked me about that journey. And I thought, what better way than to sit down and actually force myself to write it out? I actually started writing the book back in 2017, right after Usha had our first baby, my son Ewan, who's now 8 years old. And so I've been kind of writing it off and on since then. And, you know, a little bit Charlie's death, a little bit just being in the public eye, but mostly just I've been at this thing for 10 years, and I was like, it's finally time to get it out there. And so I put the finishing touches on it, submitted to the publisher a couple of months ago, and it's coming out in June. So buy the book, Communion.
I love that. Not that that wasn't also really riveting, but we're getting to the part of the interview that I'm really excited about. You are working on fraud. You're the fraud czar.
Yes.
How many bad guys? Yes, we can. How many bad guys are we going to get? I mean, that's the way there's a really nice framing of this question that I worked on. No. I want to know, what's the progress? Tell us about it.
Well, we've already gotten a lot of bad guys. And this is, one of the things I'm very proud about is that, people don't just want talk. They want action. They want us to actually go and arrest the people who committed fraud, and that's happening. We're starting to do that.
Good.
And that's a good thing. And a lot more is going to be happening in the future. But actually, who's been amazing on this is Dr. Oz, Mehmet Oz, who runs the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, because so much of the fraud in our system is people who are defrauding Medicare and Medicaid. Let me just give you a couple of examples. So we have in South Florida, we have entire companies that sell medical devices. They sell prosthetic knees and they sell prosthetic hips. And you know that they've received hundreds of millions, some of them billions of dollars in government funds, and they've never shipped a single product. They're just set up by fraudsters, and there are so many of them, and many of them haven't. There are like over 100 of these companies that haven't shipped a single product. Okay, I'll give you another example of fraud. So this ridiculous situation with Somali fraudsters in Minneapolis, in the Minneapolis area. So you have a program that exists to help autistic children get the resources they need, to help their parents, find them a ride to school, or if they need after-school support, to make sure their parents have what they need. And that program has been defrauded by Somali fraudsters who will go in, who will say that we have 3 kids, every single one of them is autistic, there's no verification from the state of Minnesota, so that family will receive tens of thousands of dollars from the taxpayer, and then the autistic children in Minneapolis who actually do need those services, the money's not there anymore because it's been taken away by fraudsters. We've completely stopped the funding to that program, and we basically told the state of Minnesota, you don't get any more of our money unless you verify that you're taking fraud seriously. So we just turned it off. But what Dr. Oz, working with some of the people in our Department of Justice, found is that in Southern California, you had all these people who were engaged in massive fraud against the Medicare system. You had just tons and tons of people getting rich off fraud. And so we had our weekly fraud check-in call 2 weeks ago, and Dr. Oz called in, but he's like, hey, I got to go because I'm about to hop on the bus and we're going to go arrest a bunch of fraudsters in Los Angeles. And I was like, that's exactly what I want you to do. By all means, get off the phone. So we're doing a lot of that stuff. And I think one of the biggest things and the most important things we're doing on this, Andrew, is that there was sort of in the Biden administration, probably intentionally, but regardless, this attitude of if you were committing fraud of under $1 million, you were committing fraud of under $1.5 million, we're just going to look the other way. And the approach that we've taken in the last couple of months is no amount of fraud is too big or too small. If you're defrauding the taxpayer, you ought to go to prison, and anybody who's helping you ought to go to prison too.
That's great. I mean, I think this is one of the absolute slam dunk issues. How many of you guys out in this audience care about American taxpayers getting ripped off? Right? This is like a 90-10, 99-1 issue.
The guy who was shouting at us earlier, he doesn't care at all about people getting ripped off by fraud.
But, I think it underscores a bigger problem, right? Because there's a lot of young people in this room, okay? A lot of you had some very formative years ripped off as well during COVID. You didn't get to do prom. Absolutely. You didn't get graduation. There were so many things taken from you. And, you entered into the college years maybe with a really anemic workforce environment, inflation, historic, life's expensive. What do you tell young people right now that even right now they're wondering, what's the future that I can get? What's the career I can get? Can I afford to have a family, kids, buy a home? What's your message to them right now that have big questions ahead of their future?
I think my message to young people who are wondering whether they can afford a family, whether they can afford a home, whether they can afford, kids and the American dream is you guys have every right to demand more of your elected leadership. And my job is to make it as possible for the answer to that question to be yes. And fundamentally, the question you should ask your politicians is exactly that. Are you pursuing policies that make it easier for me to afford a house, easier for me to get a good job, easier for me to get a good education, and easier for me to raise my family in safety and security and comfort? That is the fundamental issue. And the thing that bothered me so much about the last administration, there are all these like unique policies that I could sort of point to that were disastrous, and a lot of them were absolutely terrible. But so much of it goes back to housing and immigration and the connection between the two. Under the 4 years that Joe Biden was president, housing literally doubled in value. Meaning if you're a young person trying to buy a house, it costs twice as much as it did before. And you layer on top of that higher interest rates. That's just in 4 years. Nobody can afford that kind of inflation in the housing market. And one of the biggest drivers of it is the fact that we let in tens of millions of illegal aliens. People who shouldn't have been here, who are taking homes that ought by right go to you and your generation. And so what have we done in the Trump administration? We've shut the border. We've kicked a lot of those people who have come into the United States. We've kicked them out of our country. And importantly, we have actually instituted a ban on institutional investors buying up American homes. Because I don't want...
All right, so you can watch that in its entirety, of course. The vice president speaking at that TPUSA event just yesterday in Georgia. We were a couple minutes out from the White House press briefing. In the meantime, a White House press release that we just saw incoming here at Right Side, specifically saying, quote, "Here's how the working families tax cuts is delivering real results for the American people. Bigger refunds. The average refund this filing season is more than $3,400. That's 11% higher than last year and 19% higher than the average return over the prior 4 years." Also, the White House saying broad-based relief. This landmark legislation is putting more money back into Americans' pockets and providing real relief. We've seen an overwhelming adoption of the president's key tax priorities, with 53 million Americans, about 45% of all filers, benefiting from at least one of President Trump's signature new tax cuts. Also, no tax on tips. More than 6 million Americans have claimed no tax on tips, with an average deduction of more than $7,100, providing meaningful relief to service workers who rely on gratuities. Of course, you saw that earlier in the week with the DoorDash delivery there to the Oval Office. Also, no tax on overtime. More than 25 million Americans have benefited from no tax on overtime, with an average deduction of more than $3,100. The White House says even legacy media outlets admit this tax provision is wildly popular, including among Democrats. Also, no tax on Social Security. A new deduction made possible by the Working Families Tax Cuts ensures an overwhelming majority of seniors will pay no tax on their Social Security income as a result of deductions exceeding taxable Social Security income. More than 30 million seniors have claimed this deduction, with an average deduction of more than $7,500. So those are just a few of the highlights that the White House is saying. Of course, with the release of the press release information there sent to the media, we will probably hear a number of those factoids, as you might want to call them, or talking points at least, from Karoline Leavitt coming up here in just a minute. Also, the Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, will be there. Also, the Small Business Administrator, Kelly Loeffler, will also be in attendance for that briefing, which is set to start any minute from now. On top of that, we know that Karoline will be taking questions as well. So that's today. If there's any breaking news or developing news outside of this press briefing, of course, you can count on Right Side Broadcasting Network for that, whether on TV or online or all over the place, social media platforms and the like. And then tomorrow, President Trump will be flying from JBA, Joint Base Andrews, all the way to the Silver State out there. For those of you watching in Nevada today, he'll be there for that No Tax on Tips roundtable that will be happening in Las Vegas, Nevada. The day after that, on Friday, the president will travel to the Grand Canyon State, Arizona, for a speech to be delivered there at a TPUSA event. And guess what, RSBN viewers, it's rally day in America on Friday, because Our RSBN host, Robert McNeely, will be on site there interviewing various people, of course, like we do here at Right Side. Since you remember back in 2015, well, it's still happening, and it's pretty awesome to see that, actually. That's a lot of years of rally coverage, but also, as you guys know, political news and all sorts of news within a 24/7 news cycle. If you'd like to follow us on Truth Social, it's at RSBN. If you'd like to follow us on X, it's at RSB Network. On X, I'm Matthew US Media and Matthew Alvarez on Truth Social. Let's go to Washington.
How are you? Good to see you. We have a packed house, and I have two very special guests with me today. I will start with some scheduling announcements. Tomorrow afternoon, President Trump will travel to Las Vegas, Nevada to hold a roundtable and deliver remarks on the working families tax cuts. On Friday, President Trump will travel to Phoenix, Arizona to deliver remarks at a Turning Point USA event at Dream City Church. And I'm really honored to be standing here today on Tax Day with two esteemed members of the President's cabinet and his excellent economic team, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Small Business Administrator Kelly Loeffler. As we have seen this tax season, President Trump's working families tax cuts have put a historic amount of money back into the pockets of the American people this year. On the campaign trail in 2024, President Trump looked voters in the eye and promised them he would sign the largest tax cuts in the history of our country. And on Independence Day last year, President Trump and congressional Republicans delivered, passing the largest tax cut in history for working and middle-class Americans, including no tax on tips, overtime, and Social Security. They also passed unprecedented tax relief for small businesses, farmers, workers, and families. With Tax Day officially here, the numbers prove these tax cuts have been nothing short of extraordinary. More than 53 million filers claimed at least one of President Trump's signature new tax cuts. The average refund this filing season is more than $3,400. The Trump administration has issued more refunds and larger refunds than in any year of the history of our country. And I will allow Secretary Bessent to break down the numbers in greater detail. President Trump and Republicans in Congress have always believed that the American people know how to spend their money better than the government does. But what the American people must not forget is that every single Democrat in Congress voted against these tax refunds. The media has largely omitted this fact and other critical details in their stories covering the benefits of the Trump tax cuts. If the Democrats in Congress had gotten their way and blocked President Trump's historic legislation, Americans would have faced the largest tax hike in history, nearly $4 trillion. The average taxpayer would have seen a 22% increase in their tax rates. Democrats in Congress have proven over and over again that they are the affordability frauds who believe the government should keep more of the American people's hard-earned money. This president and Republicans in Congress fundamentally believe that Americans deserve to keep more of their hard-earned paychecks. It's a clear contrast for American families to keep in mind. So with that, I will turn it over to our great Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, and then he will turn it over to Kelly. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Caroline. I'm here to tell you that it has been a fantastic tax season. It has gone smoothly. It has gone efficiently from the point of view of the IRS, but most importantly, it's been a great tax season for the American people. Thanks to promises made, promises kept, through the working families tax cuts, the president has delivered the record refunds to the American people. More than 45% of the filers of the returns that we have seen have had at least one of the four president's signature policies: no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, the deductions for our great seniors, and the deductibility of interest on auto loans for American-made cars. And I will tell you that one of those that Americans have taken is no tax on overtime. And it's the American way. If you want to work longer hours, you get to keep more of your money. And with that, we are seeing, I want to encourage everyone out there watching today to change their withholding if they haven't already done so. Because if you change your withholding, then you will get an automatic real wage increase on a weekly or a monthly basis, and you will be able to keep more of your money this calendar year. So with that, we have also seen with the Trump accounts, we have had 5 million families file for Trump accounts for their children. 1.2 million of those are eligible for the $1,000 seed bonus. So we look forward to that picking up more and more. For those of you who haven't done it, it's easy to remember, Form 4547. You can do it while you're filing your taxes. You can do it at any point during the year. We think this is going to be transformational in terms of financial literacy. This is Financial Literacy Month, and at Treasury and all over the administration, we are working with the American people, with American families, not only to give them more of their money, but to show them how to invest it in a safe, smart, and sound way. So with that, I will turn it over to Kelly.
Great. Thank you, Scott, and good afternoon, everyone. Excited to be here on Tax Day, important day for small business because small business and their employees have real relief thanks to President Trump's working family tax cuts. As administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration, it is my great honor to serve our great president as the cabinet-level voice for America's 36 million small businesses. President Trump is right. Small business is big business. Indeed, they are a massive economic engine that creates 2/3 of all new jobs. They represent 99% of all businesses, and they drive about half of our GDP. The working family tax cuts are putting money back into the pockets of the hardest working Americans. That's why small business and their employees are benefiting the most. President Trump and congressional Republicans have saved Americans from a $4 trillion tax hike, including a staggering 20% tax increase on working families. It would have destroyed millions of jobs. Now, I've traveled the country from Maine to Alaska, and not a single worker, not a single small business asked to pay $1 more in taxes. Yet every single congressional Democrat voted to raise taxes, not just on small businesses, on our workers, on our seniors, on hardworking families. Thankfully, Republicans united behind common sense policy of letting Americans, not Washington bureaucrats or fraudsters, keep more of what they earn. Now, so far, as you've just heard, 12 million small businesses have an average tax saving of $7,000. The 20% small business pass-through deduction is now permanent, offering them certainty to plan for the future and the rocket fuel to create 1 million new jobs. Eric Williams at Prince Manufacturing in rural Georgia. He specializes in fabrication and machining. This year, he's reinvesting his tax savings to hire 500 new employees. The provisions for 100% expensing of equipment, expansion, and R&D are also growing production to help us reclaim industrial dominance. At Blue Patriot Fab, which I visited this week in Omaha, the owners highlighted one of their newest buildings, and they call it the Big Beautiful Building because the tax cuts helped them build it. Made in America is back, and that's why the America worker is winning too. No tax on tips and overtime means that millions of employees are now rewarded, not punished, for working more. And it's already benefited, as you just heard, 31 million taxpayers. In Baltimore, John and Tony Minidakis are proud second-generation owners of Jimmy's Seafood. Now, with no tax on tips and overtime, their 200 employees know that coming into work means going home with more pay. And Wade, a CNC machinist that I met at Lehigh Valley Plastics in Pennsylvania, said he routinely takes on extra shifts, and now the tax cuts reward his extra effort. And the benefits aren't just for tax season. As you've heard, the Trump accounts are connecting young people from birth to the power of our free enterprise system. With 529 savings accounts and Workforce Pell for trade schools, we're now training the next generation of skilled workers to fill millions of open jobs at small businesses. So in closing, America is open for business again. Yet every Democrat voted no on the very tax relief that is restoring Main Street, that is putting more money back into the pockets of hardworking families. Small businesses are rebounding from years of Biden inflation, decades of unfair trade, and massive regulatory overreach. But thanks to President Trump's tax cuts, they now talk about expansion, hiring plans, and generational opportunity. This is America First in action. Lower taxes, rising wages, and a thriving Main Street. Now millions of Americans are getting their largest tax refund ever, and Main Street is getting historic tax relief to keep the American dream alive. Thank you.
Good. And before we take questions, I want to provide some numbers for you all. So tax day statistics as of April 12th, over 53 million filers, nearly 45% claimed one of President Trump's signature tax cuts. The average tax cut for filers benefiting from one of President's new tax cuts is over $800. Over 6 million filers have claimed no tax on tips with an average deduction of $7,100. Over 25 million filers have claimed no tax on overtime with an average deduction of $3,100. Over 30 million seniors have claimed the enhanced deduction for seniors with an average deduction of $7,500. And over 1 million filers have claimed no tax on car loan interest on American cars for an average deduction of over $1,800. The average refund this filing season is over $3,400. Over 34 million families have claimed Republicans' enhanced child tax credit, which is permanently doubled and expanded by the working families tax cuts. Over 105 million filers have claimed the permanently doubled standard deduction, simplifying tax filing for millions across America. So as much as people do not like to pay their taxes, and we saw a survey today that 70% of Americans still believe that they are overtaxed, this is a great day for the American people.
Thank you, Scott and Kelly. We'll now open it up to questions. You're welcome to ask me questions or either of the great cabinet officials next to me. And we'll start, as always, with our new media seat, Mr. Posobiec. Why don't you kick us off?
Thank you, Caroline. Secretary Bessent, if I may, there's been this media narrative out there that while we see the data on tax refunds, that it's not good enough, that the tax season has been too soft. What is your response to this media narrative regarding the tax refunds?
Look, it's been an incredible tax season. We have done more with less at the IRS, that we have moved over millions of taxpayers to digital tax accounts, and that leaves us able to service more taxpayers in person and on the phone. And as we can see, the economy was very strong. We are seeing growth across the board in all areas, and as Kelly said, small business, Main Street are really the big beneficiaries, and this is what they don't want you to hear. That Wall Street always done great. This administration is focused on parallel prosperity and bringing prosperity back to Main Street, and that starts with people keeping more of their money.
And one for Caroline as well as the administration in general, if I may. This past Saturday, I published a video of now former Representative Eric Swalwell in bed. The president's heading to Las Vegas. Well, Eric Swalwell was in Las Vegas in this video. I'm told, according to geotagging, this scandal has erupted now. Accusers coming forward, many others coming forward, as well as questions regarding his extremely close relationship with Arizona Senator Ruben Gallego. And I want to know if the administration had any comment on the fact that Senator Gallego seemed to be very vocal about wanting the release of the Epstein files, and yet when questions come to his own involvement with Eric Swalwell, he doesn't seem to want to provide anything.
Yeah, look, I think the accusations and allegations against former Representative Swalwell are despicable and disgusting. I think it's also quite plausible, as you point out, Jack, that there were many other Democrats in this town on Capitol Hill who knew about his perhaps illegal behavior, certainly his disgusting and inappropriate behavior, and why were they silent for so long? I think those are questions that must be raised of these sitting representatives, including Mr. Gallego, and I hope that the journalists in this room will do their jobs, and the journalists on Capitol Hill will do their jobs to ask Democrats in power how they knew about such despicable behavior from one of their elected representatives for so long, but never said or did anything about it. So that's what we hope to see as far as the White House and the president is concerned. Thank you. Peter.
Thank you. I have one for you and then one for Secretary Bessent.
Sure.
For you, Caroline, there are now 10 American scientists who have either gone missing or died since mid-2024. They all reportedly had access to classified nuclear or aerospace material. Is anybody investigating this to see if these things are connected?
I've seen the report, Peter. I haven't spoken to our relevant agencies about it. I will certainly do that and we'll get you an answer. If true, of course, that's definitely something I think this government and administration would deem worth looking into. So let me do that for you.
Thank you. And Secretary Bessent, it doesn't sound like we're going to have $3 a gallon gas by summertime, which we had initially been told by the Energy Secretary. He now says that it would be very aggressive if we're going to get to the $3 a gallon gas by the summer. So when are we really going to get $3 a gallon gas?
Well, I think that's going to be the up to how the negotiations go. President Trump said this morning that he thinks we're nearing the end. The U.S. kept their side on the ceasefire. We've stopped firing. The Straits of Hormuz have not been completely reopened, so we will see. And I'm optimistic that during the summer we will see gas with a 3 in front of it sooner rather than later. It's Bank Week here in D.C., so I've been meeting with a lot of my Middle Eastern counterparts, the finance ministers, and they all say that once the straits are open, they can start pumping again within 1 week.
So not by summer like Memorial Day, but maybe by Labor Day?
Again, I'm optimistic that sometime between June 20th and September 20th that we can have $3 gas again. And as I said this morning too, we are going to be watching the gas stations because they raise prices very quickly when when the crude oil prices went up. We hope they'll bring them down just as quickly as crude oil prices have come down, which they've come down substantially just in the past 10 days.
Great. Sure.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Can you give us an update on the president's thinking on the next attorney general? A lot of names have been going around, like Ron DeSantis, Rudy Giuliani, Ed Martin. They're being floated as contenders. What qualities is the president looking for in a new AG? And will there be accountability for what many have described as weaponization within Biden's office when he was the president?
Sure. Well, certainly ensuring that there's accountability for the weaponization of justice that took place under the Biden administration is a top priority for this president. With respect to names that are floated, there are always names floated in the press. Sometimes I have a chuckle when I read some of the reports about certain people floated for certain jobs. As far as the president is concerned right now, Todd Blanche remains the acting attorney general. The president feels he's doing a good job, and that's where it remains right now. I don't have any personnel updates for you today. Annie.
Thank you, Caroline. I have a question for you and also for the Treasury Secretary. First of all, there was an interview that Dr. Mehmet Oz did recently where he described the president's views on his own diet. He said that he argued that diet soda is good for him because it kills grass. And if you pour it onto the grass, the grass is killed and it therefore must kill cancer cells. I'm wondering if you can, was this sort of an accurate description of how the president sees?
Look, as we all know in this room, I think you know the president has a very good sense of humor. It's one of his most underreported characteristics, I would say. I have heard him tell this joke before. I think the Wall Street Journal should get a better sense of humor.
And then another one for you. Has the president filed his taxes and is he going to release them publicly?
It's actually a very good question. I have not inquired with the president directly about his own taxes, but I'm happy to do so and we'll get you an answer on that.
Secretary Bessent,
I have filed my taxes.
The president has publicly said that you are the reason that he has not fired Chairman Jay Powell. Will you make that case again to him, as he's recently said that he still wants to fire the chairman?
Look, I am confident that the process that we have laid out in terms of Kevin Warsh becoming the next Fed chair, he's going to have the hearing on the 21st of this month. He's a great candidate. We know that the Republicans on the Senate Banking Committee are aligned in that, and I am very optimistic that Kevin Warsh will be the chair of the Fed on time, and that will be a moot question.
Stephen, go ahead.
Secretary Bessent, you mentioned that the no tax on overtime is the biggest one that people are claiming. I think you said 25 million people. Have you seen evidence that more companies are offering overtime or that people are working more overtime and increasing their productivity? And the second question, the health insurance industry is advertising heavily in D.C., describing themselves as the good guys in the whole healthcare system. President Trump has threatened to haul in their executives and force them to lower prices. Can you provide any update on the administration's efforts there?
Okay, so I'll take the second one last because that's not my area. I don't wear a lot of hats here, but I am sure that the president makes his views known with corporate executives, and if that is true, then they will be hauled before him. And with overtime, as Kelly and I go out and talk to employers and workers around the country, they all want more overtime. And there was this narrative that I think over 2 million illegal aliens have either voluntarily deported or been deported, and that there would be a worker shortage. Well, what better way to fill that gap than with overtime for hardworking Americans and for them to keep more of it? I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I'll just add that a great example are the factories that we see coming back thanks to 100% Made in America expensing. Coosa Steel is a great example in Rome, Georgia, where the owner was down to running one shift 1 day a week. He's up to 2 or 3 shifts 5 or 6 days a week. So thanks to reindustrializing this nation through our small manufacturing base, which most manufacturers in America meet the small business definition, 98% of them, we're seeing more shifts taking place, more opportunities for overtime, and then more willingness of workers to take on overtime shifts, because in the past they were penalized by the tax system for taking on overtime.
Elizabeth, go ahead. Thank you. This is for Administrator Loeffler. You talked about how the One Big Beautiful Bill benefits small businesses. With small business optimism falling in March, is the administration planning on providing any additional tax relief or other resources to small businesses that have been affected by high fuel prices during their run operation?
Yeah, so one data point does not a trend make, and the long-term trend under President Trump has been for small business optimism to be above its 52-year average. Under Joe Biden, small business optimism fell below that average for 34 consecutive months because small business was being crushed by regulation, massive red tape, the threat of high taxes, and all the burdens of the Green New Deal. So right now, small businesses are really in growth mode. They're planning to hire, and the optimism is very strong. If you see in the NAM survey, National Association of Manufacturers came out, their optimism is up 5 points. So I think this is temporary, and we'll get back on trend.
What's the status of extending the Iran ceasefire, Caroline?
Yes, so I saw some reporting, again, bad reporting this morning, that we had formally requested an extension of the ceasefire. That is not true at this moment. We've remained very much engaged in these negotiations, in these talks. You heard from the Vice President directly and the President this week that these conversations are productive and ongoing, and that's where we are right now. I've also seen some reporting about the potentiality for in-person discussions again. Those discussions are being had, but nothing is official until you hear it from us here at the White House. But we feel good about the prospects of a deal. The President mentioned that in his interview yesterday, and it's obviously in the best interest of Iran to meet the President's demands. I think he's made his red lines in these negotiations very clear to the other side, and so we are continuing to see how these conversations go.
Would those talks be in Islamabad, or where would they be the next round?
They would very likely be in the same place as they were last time, yes. With the same, I would just want to make one point that's important to the President. The Pakistanis have been incredible mediators throughout this process, and we really appreciate their friendship and their efforts to bring this deal to a close. So they are the only mediator in this negotiation. While there have been many countries around the world who want to offer their help, the President feels it's important to continue to streamline this communication through the Pakistanis, and so that's what continues to take place. Will.
Thank you, Caroline. How much room do you see for additional sanctions being placed on Iran? And do you feel like the United States is getting enough support from allies on that front? There was a letter that went to Oman and some other allies that suggested maybe the sanctions weren't, this could be for Secretary Bessent as well, but the sanctions basically weren't having the effect that the United States wanted.
I'll let the Treasury Secretary, who's in charge of sanctions, answer that question.
Yeah, I think that's not a correct characterization. Yesterday, we announced Operation Economic Fury, and we, for over a year, we have had maximum pressure on the Iranians, both on blocking payments into the Iranian state and going after the accounts of the IRGC. One of what may prove to be fatal mistakes that the Iranians made was bombing their GCC neighbors, and who are now willing to be much more transparent in terms of the funds or do a deeper dive in investigating the funds that are held within their banking systems. So we have pushed out to them the request that we want to freeze more funds of the leadership of the IRGC and any members of Iranian leadership. The other thing that we have done is we have told countries that if you are buying Iranian oil, that if Iranian money is sitting in your banks, we are now willing to apply secondary sanctions, which is a very stern measure. And the Iranians should know that this is going to be the financial equivalent of what we saw in the kinetic activities.
Is this an example of expanding the war economically as opposed to militarily? Is this another phase of that?
Exactly.
Secretary, what was the coordination? Any update on the insurance program, the U.S. reinsurance program for ships and tankers sailing through the Strait of Hormuz? Any update on that, sir?
Well, it's now up to $40 billion. It's run through the DFC, and we are waiting for the ships to be able to get some semblance of normality, and then they can come to the DFC and our private sector partners and request the insurance.
And what do you tell private shipping companies out there right now nervous about this whole thing, saying, wondering if they should even get near the strait?
What's that?
What do you tell to encourage shipping companies to do business through the strait?
Well, I think we're going to have to wait and see when they are permanently open, because this is a mechanism. When we declare that it is safe, they also have to have insurance. Lloyd's of London had skyrocketing insurance during the time. The rates are still very high. So we want to provide, the U.S. government will make a profit on this, but we want to provide a more normalized level and an economically sound basis for ships to move in and out of the Gulf as they did before the start of the conflict.
Thanks, Caroline. I appreciate it. Thanks, Caroline. Yeah, thanks, Caroline. I appreciate it. So I want to cover two topics, if I could, the tax day, but also the confirmation. So the confirmation hearing set for next week for Kevin Warsh, but Senator Tom Tillis is still a no, and he's holding firm on that. How are you going to win over Senator Tillis to get this confirmation out of committee?
Well, I'm sure Senator Tillis wants to do the best thing for the Federal Reserve, for the American people. He has publicly said that Kevin Warsh is a great candidate for the chair. So let's get to the hearings and see where we are then.
I want to ask you about tax day, if I could. So the tax gains that you've talked about through the One Big Beautiful Bill, is that going to offset the consternation from Americans, for lack of a better term, over the $4 gallon of gas?
Well, again, as I said, no one's ever objected to more money in their pocket. So the Americans have more money. They can decide how they want to spend it. And I did want to come back to the overtime question, because I was up in Westchester County last Friday, and I met with several of the first responders and police unions. And those, whether it's our great policemen, our firemen, our ambulance drivers, they all now want more overtime. And how great it is to have them to be able to be engaged and keep more of their money.
Thank you, Caroline. For both of you, perhaps, are President Trump's threats of a 50% tariff against China still on the table now, or is the letter exchange that we talked about now taking that off of the table?
Well, as you know, the president spoke about the letter with respect to he and the correspondence between he and President Xi. President Xi assured the president that they are not supplying Iran with weapons throughout this conflict, and that assurance was made to the president. It's obviously something the administration keeps close tabs on with respect to tariff. You have any update on that, Mr. Secretary?
I don't have an update on the tariffs, but I do have an update on sanctions. Iran is used to be the largest state sponsor of terrorism. China was purchasing more than 90% of their oil, which is about 8% of China's energy needs. We believe this blockade in the Straits, there will be a pause of Chinese buying, but I will tell you that 2 Chinese banks received letters from the U.S. Treasury. I'm not going to identify the banks, but we told them that if we can prove that there is Iranian money flowing through your accounts, then we are willing to put on secondary sanctions.
And are you,
Nick, go ahead. Thank you, Caroline. Go ahead, Nick.
Just a quick follow-up. So my question, sure. Are you considering any more sanctions relief, Mr. Secretary, for countries that are suffering right now in order to give more oil to your allies?
We will not be renewing the general license on Russian oil, and we will not be renewing the general license on Iranian oil. Because again, that was oil that was on the water prior to March 11th.
Right.
So all that has been used.
Nick, go ahead.
Treasury Secretary, as you both noted, 53 million Americans have used one of these new tax exemptions the president enacted. Can you speak to not only the relief that's bringing specifically working class Americans like waiters, bartenders, overtime workers, but also the impact this is going to have on the economy?
Well, a couple of things there is I can tell you, I think Kelly's very popular, but I think with service workers, I may be the most popular cabinet secretary in D.C. because when I show up, a doorman, the not so much bartenders, but waiters, waitresses, they all say thank you for no tax on tips. Again, I was in a diner up in Westchester County, and this is a home run. In terms of what's happening with these folks, and what we can't tell you yet, and we will be able to provide data at a later date, that 52 million is how many have used at least one of those. So we expect that there are probably multiple filers who have used at least more than one of those 4 signature things. And look, again, this is the America First, Americans, hardworking Americans keeping more of their money, just like with our small businesses. If we go back and look, when you hear the left talk about this was a tax cut for millionaires and billionaires, they wanted to raise the tax rate for everyone making more than $500,000. That is a small business killer.
I have one question for the Secretary and then the Administrator. Mr. Secretary, since we're on the topic of China a few minutes ago, we are a little over a year past Liberation Day, the tariffs. The goods trade deficit with China has dropped sharply. Are those gains sustainable, and are you worried about any retaliatory actions that could go against those gains?
I actually think we're going to be building on those gains in terms of the trade deficit dropping with China. Since last summer, there's been great stability in the relationship, and really the keystone to the relationship is the strong respect that the two leaders have between each other. My experience has been when the communication is at the top, then we follow that directive and those wishes. We had the meeting in Busan, Korea. In October, we will be having the state visit in Beijing, and so I expect great stability in the relationship, but that doesn't mean that our trade deficit can't continue dropping.
Go ahead, for the Administrator, I know that there are orders and shipments of factory equipment. They are at record highs. How many small businesses has the SBA assisted with loans and supports, with loans to support them?
Well, the SBA set an all-time lending record last year of $45 billion under President Trump, because small businesses now have access to the capital that they need to build in America. Again, we are becoming a nation of builders, and we see that on the ground, factories expanding. As a result, we have record PMI, which is Purchasing Managers Index, manufacturing expansion, 2 consecutive months in a row of export records. And so when you look at where our nation has come in terms of export-import imbalance, it's been unfair to the American worker and to American industry, and we're reshoring whole industries because of this tax bill.
Libby.
Libby, go ahead.
Thank you, Cara.
I have 2 questions for you. The first one is about Iran. The second one's actually about United Airlines that I want to ask you about. So on Iran, is there a timeline for how long this blockade is going to remain in place and Strait of Hormuz by the United States that President Trump has voiced to you or that you've heard among officials?
Sure. I will never set timelines on behalf of the President of the United States, but with respect to the blockade, as you know, it has been fully implemented, and it's being enforced against vessels of all nations entering or departing Iranian ports. I want to make that point clear. I've seen some misreporting on that as well. This includes all Iranian ports on the Arabian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. And our U.S. forces in the region are supporting the freedom of navigation for vessels that are transiting the strait to and from non-Iranian ports. So I know some in the press were confused about that. We are supporting the freedom of navigation, just not with respect to any tanker or vessel that would benefit the economy of Iran as these negotiations continue.
So there was reports that the CEO of United proposed a merger with American Airlines. This would affect tens of millions of Americans. That was proposed in a meeting with President Trump. Was that a merger that he has voiced any kind of support of?
It's not anything that we have a position on or anything we're commenting on. I know it's an idea that has been proposed by private industry, but it's not something the President or the White House have an opinion on or are weighing in on at this time. John, go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. This is for Secretary Bessent. On Monday of next week, importers can start requesting claims for tariff refunds. And my understanding is $127 billion eligible for refunds. What's that process look like? How can a porter and an importer request such a refund going forward?
That's not being run out of Treasury. We will just be the paymaster. So that's being run out of CPB. Yep.
And so explain that process. I understand you're not running it. How does that process actually work? If you're an importer, you paid these tariffs, the Supreme Court found that those tariffs were illegal. What's the process for them to get back that money?
Well, they would be in touch with the CPB, and I think the number you're quoting is so that's the amount who have already requested refunds. So they are already in the chute, and we'll see what the timeline is for that.
Will that affect the U.S. economy, all of those refunds coming out of the U.S. Treasury?
We'll have to see what comes out, and we'll have to see what the companies do with them. Just to be clear, thanks to the Supreme Court, some of this money is going back to China. So is that going to affect the U.S. economy? I don't know.
A question for Secretary Bessent.
Danny, go ahead.
Secretary, you were quoted as saying in an interview earlier this week that it was worth a bit of economic pain for international security. Is that this administration's message to American voters with high gas prices that ahead of the midterms this year that it's worth the economic pain?
Well, the message is the short-term volatility for long-term gain.
And Danny, if I could add to that, the President's been very clear, again, as the Secretary just said, this is a short-term disruption for the long-term strategic goal of the United States to ensure that the world's leading state sponsor of terror cannot obtain a nuclear weapon. That's a good thing for the American people. That's a good thing for people all over the world. And as the President and his economic and energy team have repeatedly stated, as soon as the operation and now the negotiations with Iran conclude and the strait is reopened, we do expect gas prices to decrease. And thank goodness we have a president and an administration that believes in American energy dominance in bringing down prices at the pump. Look at how gas prices decreased over the past year since this president was in office. It's a stark contrast to the previous administration and Democrats in this city who believe in hampering our domestic energy industry, who believe in importing our most precious resources, who believe in implementing policies that created the worst inflation crisis in history. So President Trump has built the greatest economy in the world before. He is doing it again. Of course, we have this short-term disruption, but again, it's for the long-term strategic goal of ensuring that these terrorists cannot possess a nuclear bomb. Jennifer.
For Secretary Bessent, on the Russian oil, I know the sanctions waivers have expired, but how much money did Russia benefit from that temporary sanctions rules? You initially said about $2 billion. Is that?
It could have been $2 billion. We don't know. But it's let's think of a different world where oil spiked to 150, and they would have made a lot more by doing that, by pushing the Russian barrels that were already on the water. They were going to be sold. They were going to China no matter what. We pushed them to our allies. We helped stabilize the oil price. And as you can see, there were doomsday scenarios. Oil's going to 150, it's going to 200, it's going to $250. West Texas crude for the front month delivery is about $92 or $93 now.
Thank you, everybody. I know we have two very busy cabinet secretaries with us here today. Before we do depart, just one final announcement. As you know, this year we celebrate America's 250th birthday. In honor of this historic occasion, President Trump and the Department of Interior will submit plans for the United States Triumphal Arch, which will be an architectural masterpiece to celebrate our history right here in Washington, D.C. This is a rendering of the Arch for you. Thank you, Peter. It's quite beautiful, as you can see, and this monumental arch will beam at 250 feet tall in honor of 250 years and stand on ground that is currently empty green space in Memorial Circle on Columbia Island, a man-made island in the Potomac River managed by the National Park Service. The United States Triumphal Arch will be outfitted with beautiful artwork and depictions celebrating the success of the American people over our 250-year history and the enduring triumph of the American spirit. Long after everyone in this room is gone, our children and grandchildren will remain inspired by this national monument. Beginning construction this year on the architectural arch is a fitting way to commemorate the 250th anniversary of American independence. Great nations build beautiful structures that cultivate national pride and love of country, and this triumphal arch should be a project that all Americans of all political persuasions can support because it's a monument for every American to celebrate 250 years of our nation's proud history. And again, the plans for this will be submitted tomorrow. We'll have many more announcements with respect to our 250th anniversary in the coming months as we look forward to the 4th of July. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.
And coming up on Friday, we'll actually be speaking to the White House about America 250. Of course, Friday is the day President Trump will be out there in Arizona. For those of you watching in the Grand Canyon State, of course, we'll be boots on the ground there as well, interviewing a number of people. So we're looking forward to that as the White House holding a press briefing today on this April 15th tax day. And about 24 hours from now, President Trump will travel to Nevada to host that roundtable on no tax on tips. And then once again on Friday, the 47th president will be in Arizona to deliver that speech at the tvOS event there. We'll be live again in the Grand Canyon State. Looking forward to that coverage. This live stream brought to you by a number of great sponsors, including mypillow.com/RSBN. If you're looking for a warehouse moving sale, you found one, and it's with mypillow.com/RSBN. A ton of great products, as you guys know, and some great savings as well. Up to 80% off, more than 2,000 products to choose from. So there's a lot to peruse on mypillow.com/RSBN. Also, speaking of our network, if you'd like to donate to the network as we continue to grow and expand and cover all sorts of events, including sending our crew all the way out there to the Grand Canyon State, all you have to do is go to rsbnetwork.com/donate. Thanks so much for watching this live stream here on Right Side Broadcasting Network on this tax day. Hopefully you get a refund. I know a lot of people are. In the meantime, my name is Matthew Alvarez. Thank you again for joining us. If you'd like to follow us on Truth Social, just go to @RSBN. On X, it's @RSB Network. And if you'd like to follow me, it's @MatthewUSMedia on X and @Matthew Alvarez on Right Side Broadcasting Network on Truth Social. All right, thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you again